In 1947, Admiral Richard Byrd led 4,000 troops to Antarctica for what was supposed to be an 8-month mission. They returned in just 6 weeks. Byrd's final words: "There's a whole continent of secrets down there. For the next 2.5 hours, uncover what governments have buried beneath the ice for 80 years. This is Antarctica's forbidden history they don't want you to know." If you're here for forbidden history, you're in the right place. I'm covering Antarctica's darkest secrets that most channels won't touch. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next video, where I will reveal something more interesting. Now, let's dive in. The continent that hides secrets, Antarctica. The name alone conjures images of endless white horizons, howling winds that could freeze your breath mid-air, and a desolation so complete it seems like the edge of the world itself. Covering over 5 million square miles, this frozen continent at the bottom of our planet is larger than Europe. It holds 90% of the world's ice and 70% of its fresh water. Temperatures plunge to minus 130 degrees Fahrenheit. Winds roar at 200 miles per hour. For 6 months of the year, the sun never rises. For the other 6 months, it never sets. But Antarctica is more than just a frozen wasteland. It is a place wrapped in mystery, guarded by international treaties, and off-limits to independent exploration. While we are told it's a pristine scientific preserve, the question remains, what are they really protecting down there? The history we've been taught about Antarctica is simple. It was discovered in the early 19th century. Explorers like Roald Amundsen and Robert Scott raced to reach the South Pole in the early 1900s. Scientists set up research stations. End of story. But that narrative is far too clean, far too convenient. Because the real history of Antarctica, the forbidden history, tells a very different tale. Let me take you back to a time before modern exploration, before satellites and GPS, before we even knew Antarctica existed as a continent. In 1513, a Turkish admiral named Piri Reis compiled a world map using ancient source charts, some reportedly from the Library of Alexandria. This map, known today as the Piri Reis map, shows the coastline of Antarctica with remarkable accuracy. But here's the problem. The coastline it depicts is ice-free. The land masses, the bays, the mountain ranges, they're all there, drawn as if someone had mapped them from above when the continent wasn't buried under miles of ice. Mainstream historians dismiss this. They say it's a coincidence, a misinterpretation, or that Piri Reis simply drew the coast of South America inaccurately. But the mathematics don't lie. When researchers analyzed the map using modern cartographic techniques, they found that the coordinates matched Antarctica's actual coastline beneath the ice with stunning precision. The implication is staggering. Someone mapped Antarctica before it was covered in ice, which, according to geological records, would have been at least 6,000 years ago, possibly much longer. Who had the capability to accurately map an entire continent from an aerial perspective 6 millennia before the Wright brothers took flight? The orthodox answer is nobody. But the map exists. It's not a forgery. It's housed in the Topkapi Palace Museum in Istanbul. Scholars have authenticated it. The Turkish Navy used it. And it shows knowledge that, according to our accepted timeline of human civilization, should not exist. This is where Antarctica's forbidden history begins. Not with modern explorers, but with ancient cartographers who somehow possess knowledge of a world we're only now beginning to understand. And if ancient peoples knew about Antarctica, if they mapped it, then they must have been there. They must have seen it. They must have, at some point in the distant past, had access to a continent we believe was unreachable until the 1800s. Fast forward to the 20th century. The world is gripped by war, technology is advancing at breakneck speed, and suddenly, the great powers of the world take an intense interest in Antarctica. Not just for science, not just for exploration, but for something else entirely. During World War II, rumors began to circulate about Nazi expeditions to Antarctica. The Third Reich, obsessed with occult knowledge and ancient civilizations, reportedly sent several missions to the frozen south. They established a base, some say, called Neuschwabenland, or New Swabia. According to declassified documents and eyewitness accounts, the Nazis didn't just plant a flag and leave. They built infrastructure. They brought scientists, equipment, and resources. They were looking for something, or perhaps hiding something. Most historians wave this off as conspiracy theory, the product of overactive imaginations and Cold War paranoia. But then why, in 1947, did the United States launch the largest military operation ever conducted in Antarctica? Why did they send an armada, including an aircraft carrier, icebreakers, submarines, helicopters, and over 4,000 troops to a frozen wasteland where no enemy supposedly existed? This operation, codenamed Operation Highjump, was led by Rear Admiral Richard Byrd, a decorated naval officer and experienced polar explorer. Byrd was a national hero, the first man to fly over the North Pole, a recipient of the Medal of Honor. He was not a man given to flights of fancy. He was a career military officer with impeccable credentials. And yet, what happened during Operation Highjump remains one of the most controversial and suppressed events in modern military history. The official story is that Highjump was a training mission, a way to test equipment and personnel in extreme cold weather conditions. They were there to establish a research base, conduct scientific observations, and practice polar logistics. The mission was supposed to last 8 months, spanning the Antarctic summer and into the winter. 13 ships, 23 aircraft, and over 4,000 men were deployed. It was, by any measure, a massive undertaking. But something went wrong, terribly wrong. After just 6 weeks, the operation was abruptly terminated. The fleet returned to the United States months ahead of schedule. Several aircraft were lost, men were killed, though the exact number and circumstances remain classified. And Admiral Byrd, upon his return, made a series of cryptic statements to the press that would haunt researchers for decades. In a March 1947 interview with a Chilean newspaper, Byrd reportedly said that the United States needed to prepare defenses against enemy aircraft that could fly from pole to pole at incredible speeds. He spoke of a new enemy that could strike America from the polar regions. He warned that in the case of a new war, the continent of America would be attacked by flying objects that could travel from one pole to the other at incredible speed. These were not the words of a man who had just completed a routine training exercise. Then Byrd was debriefed in Washington. The details of that debriefing remain classified to this day. He was essentially silenced, forbidden from speaking publicly about what he had witnessed in Antarctica. He would make one more expedition to the frozen continent in 1956 during Operation Deep Freeze, but his journal entries and personal logs from that mission have never been fully released to the public. What did Admiral Byrd see down there? What did his men encounter that forced them to abandon a meticulously planned, lavishly funded military operation? Why were aircraft lost? Why the secrecy? Why the cover-up? These questions bring us to the heart of Antarctica's forbidden history. Because from 1947 onward, the world's governments have treated Antarctica very differently. In 1959, 12 nations signed the Antarctic Treaty, which came into force in 1961. This treaty, which now includes over 50 signatory nations, establishes Antarctica as a scientific preserve. It bans military activity, prohibits nuclear testing, freezes territorial claims, and ensures freedom of scientific research. On the surface, this sounds noble. It protects the environment, promotes international cooperation, and keeps Antarctica demilitarized. But, read between the lines, the treaty also restricts who can go there. It limits where you can explore. It requires permits, government approval, and oversight for any expedition. Independent researchers, amateur explorers, journalists seeking to investigate, they're all effectively banned from conducting unsanctioned operations in Antarctica. Why? If Antarctica is just a frozen desert with some penguins and research stations, why the need for such stringent international control? Why is it the only continent on Earth governed by a multinational treaty that supersedes national sovereignty? What are they protecting? Or, more accurately, what are they hiding? Throughout this documentary, we're going to explore the evidence, piece by piece, layer by layer. We'll examine Admiral Byrd's lost diary, which allegedly describes an encounter with an advanced civilization living inside the Earth. We'll investigate the Reis map and other ancient charts that suggest Antarctica was known and mapped in prehistory. We'll delve into the Nazi expeditions, the rumors of secret bases, and the possibility that the Third Reich established a foothold in the Antarctic that survived the end of World War II. We'll look at modern satellite imagery that shows anomalies beneath the ice, structures that appear too geometric to be natural, formations that suggest artificial construction. We'll hear from whistleblowers, scientists, and military personnel who claim to have seen things in Antarctica that defy conventional explanation. We'll examine the mysterious deaths and disappearances of researchers who ventured too far or asked too many questions. And we'll confront the ultimate question: is there an ancient civilization buried beneath the ice? Could Antarctica have once been a temperate continent, home to an advanced society that was wiped out by a cataclysmic event thousands of years ago? Are there ruins down there, remnants of a lost world that would rewrite human history? The evidence is fragmented, often suppressed, sometimes contradictory. But it exists, and it points to a reality far stranger than anything you've been taught in school. Antarctica is not just a continent of ice. It is a continent of secrets, a repository of forbidden knowledge, and perhaps the key to understanding humanity's true origins. Before we proceed, understand this. The information you're about to hear is controversial. It challenges the mainstream narrative. It questions the official story. Some of what we'll discuss is based on declassified documents, eyewitness testimony, and scientific anomalies. Other parts venture into the realm of speculation, connecting dots that the establishment refuses to acknowledge. But isn't that what true investigation is about? Asking uncomfortable questions, challenging authority, seeking truth even when it's been deliberately hidden? Antarctica is the coldest, driest, windiest place on Earth. It is also the most mysterious. For over half a century, governments have maintained an iron grip on what information gets out and what stays buried. But cracks are forming in that wall of secrecy. Satellite technology, whistleblower testimonies, leaked documents, and independent researchers are slowly bringing the truth to light. So, prepare yourself. The journey we're about to take will challenge everything you think you know about history, about exploration, about the world beneath your feet. We're going to the bottom of the Earth to uncover the secrets they've hidden in the ice. Secrets about lost civilizations, military cover-ups, and perhaps the greatest discovery in human history. This is Antarctica's forbidden history, and it's time the world knew the truth. Operation Highjump, the military mission that failed, December 1946. The world was still reeling from the devastation of World War II. The atomic age had begun. The Cold War was taking shape. And in the midst of this global upheaval, the United States Navy assembled the largest Antarctic expedition in history. This was Operation Highjump, officially designated as the United States Navy Antarctic Developments Program. The scale of the operation was unprecedented. 13 ships, including the flagship USS Mount Olympus, the aircraft carrier USS Philippine Sea, the submarine USS Senate, 2 seaplane tenders, 2 tankers, 2 destroyers, and several icebreakers and cargo vessels. 23 aircraft ranging from large Martin PBM Mariner seaplanes to smaller observation craft. Over 4,700 men, including scientists, engineers, medical personnel, and military troops. The official objectives, as stated by the Navy, were straightforward. They wanted to train personnel and test equipment under extreme polar conditions. They aimed to consolidate American claims in Antarctica. They planned to establish a research base, later named Little America 4. They would conduct aerial surveys, map unexplored regions, and gather scientific data about weather patterns, ice formations, and magnetic anomalies. On paper, it was a comprehensive scientific and military training exercise. The mission was scheduled to last 6 to 8 months, from the Antarctic summer of December 1946 through early 1948. The Navy had budgeted millions of dollars. They had assembled the finest polar experts, including Admiral Richard Byrd, who had already made 3 previous expeditions to Antarctica. But within weeks of arrival, something went catastrophically wrong. The fleet departed Norfolk, Virginia in December 1946. They sailed south, crossed the equator, navigated the treacherous waters around Cape Horn, and entered the Southern Ocean. By early January 1947, they reached the Antarctic coast. Base camp was established at Little America, along the Ross Ice Shelf. Aircraft began their reconnaissance flights. Ships mapped the coastline, and the operation moved into full swing. Then, on February 3, 1947, disaster struck. A PBM Mariner seaplane, George 1, crashed during a reconnaissance flight. 3 crew members were killed instantly. The aircraft was destroyed. The official cause was listed as a whiteout, extreme turbulence, and pilot disorientation. But survivors from the expedition would later tell a different story. According to these accounts, the aircraft had not simply crashed due to weather. It had been attacked. Witnesses reported seeing disc-shaped objects emerging from the water, moving at impossible speeds, and disabling the plane with some form of energy weapon. The crew had radioed in distress, describing craft that moved unlike anything they had ever seen, craft that defied the laws of physics. At the time, these reports were dismissed as hallucinations, stress-induced delusions brought on by the extreme cold and isolation. But they persisted. Other pilots began reporting similar encounters. They spoke of silvery discs that would appear out of nowhere, pace their aircraft, perform maneuvers that no known technology could replicate, and then vanish into the ice or water below. Admiral Byrd himself, leading one of the aerial reconnaissance missions, allegedly encountered these phenomena. According to his partially declassified flight logs and later testimonies, Byrd's plane was intercepted by flying craft that escorted him to an unknown location. He was taken inside a massive ice cavern, where he met with beings who warned him about humanity's use of nuclear weapons. They told him their civilization had observed the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki with great concern. They cautioned that humanity was on a dangerous path and that the Antarctic region was under their protection. Now, before you dismiss this as pure fantasy, consider the source. Admiral Richard Byrd was a national hero, a Medal of Honor recipient, a man of unimpeachable integrity. His exploits were front-page news. He had testified before Congress. He had advised presidents. He was not the type of person to fabricate wild stories or suffer from delusions. And yet, upon his return from Operation Highjump, his tone changed dramatically. In that now famous interview with El Mercurio, a Chilean newspaper, on March 5, 1947, Byrd made statements that shocked the world. He said, "It is necessary for the USA to take defensive actions against enemy air fighters which come from the polar regions." He warned of a new enemy that possessed flying machines that could cover the distance from one pole to the other at incredible speeds. He stated that in the case of a new war, America would be attacked by craft that could fly over both poles. These were extraordinary claims. Who was this enemy? What were these flying machines? Why would they be based in Antarctica? The mainstream press briefly picked up the story, but it was quickly suppressed. Byrd was called back to Washington for extensive debriefing. He was, by many accounts, ordered to remain silent about what he had truly encountered. Meanwhile, back in Antarctica, the situation was deteriorating. More aircraft were lost under mysterious circumstances. Ships reported equipment malfunctions, compass failures, and bizarre electromagnetic interference. Personnel were experiencing psychological distress, reporting sightings of lights in the sky, strange sounds emanating from beneath the ice, and a pervasive sense of being watched. By late February 1947, just 6 weeks into what was supposed to be an 8-month mission, the decision was made to abort. The fleet was ordered to withdraw. They left behind equipment, supplies, and plans for long-term bases. They abandoned the mission objectives and sailed north as quickly as the ice would allow. The official explanation was weather. They claimed unexpected ice conditions made it too dangerous to continue. They said equipment failures and the loss of aircraft had compromised the mission. But veterans of the expedition would later reveal that the withdrawal was not due to weather or logistics. It was a retreat, a full-scale military retreat from an enemy they could not fight. In the years following Operation Highjump, the U.S. government went to great lengths to classify and suppress information about the expedition. Reports were sealed, photographs were confiscated, personnel were debriefed and told never to speak publicly about certain aspects of the mission. Admiral Byrd himself would never again openly discuss what he had witnessed. But he did leave behind a diary, a personal journal that was not meant for public consumption. This diary, which would later surface through Byrd's family, contains entries that were never officially acknowledged. In it, Byrd describes flying beyond the South Pole and entering a region where the landscape changed. He writes of green valleys, lakes, rivers, and forests. He describes encountering a civilization living inside the Earth, beings of great advancement who possess technology far beyond anything known to surface humanity. Whether you believe Byrd's diary is authentic or not, the fact remains that something happened in Antarctica in 1947 that caused the most powerful military in the world to abandon a massively funded operation and retreat in haste. Something forced the U.S. Navy to leave the continent and never attempt another military expedition of that scale again. In the wake of Highjump's failure, other nations took notice. The Soviet Union began its own Antarctic expeditions. So did the British, the Norwegians, the Australians, and the French. But they all operated under strict guidelines. They all adhered to unspoken rules about where they could go and what they could explore. And by 1959, they all came together to sign the Antarctic Treaty, effectively locking down the continent under international control. The timing is suspicious. Just 12 years after Operation Highjump, after a period of intense but secretive activity in Antarctica, the world's governments suddenly agreed to treat the continent as off-limits for military use, to restrict independent exploration, and to control all information coming out of the region. What prompted this unprecedented cooperation? What did they discover down there that made it so important to regulate access? Some researchers believe that Operation Highjump was not a training mission at all. They argue it was a military assault, an attempt to destroy or neutralize whatever the Nazis had established in Antarctica during the war. According to this theory, the Third Reich had indeed built a secret base, possibly with the help of advanced technology they had acquired or developed. When the war ended, high-ranking Nazis and scientists fled to this Antarctic stronghold. The U.S., having learned of this through intelligence channels, launched Highjump to eliminate the threat. But they failed. The technology they encountered was too advanced, the defenses too strong. The Americans suffered losses, were forced to retreat, and had to accept that there was a presence in Antarctica they could not defeat with conventional military force. So instead of risking another confrontation, the world powers agreed to a treaty, a way to contain and monitor the situation without triggering an all-out conflict. This theory is supported by declassified documents that show extensive U.S. intelligence gathering on Nazi activities in Antarctica. Reports from 1945 and 46 describe German U-boats traveling to the southern continent, transporting cargo and personnel. Some U-boats disappeared and were never accounted for. Others surrendered in Argentina months after the war had officially ended, their crews refusing to explain their activities during the final days of the conflict. There are also the testimonies of German submariners and engineers who claimed, decades later, that they had been part of a secret Antarctic operation. They described vast underground facilities, powered by geothermal energy, capable of housing thousands of people. They spoke of advanced aircraft, disc-shaped craft that used electromagnetic propulsion. They insisted that the base was never destroyed, and that it remains operational to this day. Mainstream historians reject these claims. They say there is no credible evidence of a Nazi Antarctic base. They point out that the logistical challenges of building and maintaining such a facility in the harshest environment on Earth would have been insurmountable, especially for a nation that was losing the war and running out of resources. But the counter-argument is simple. If it was impossible, then why did the Nazis even try? Why send expeditions to Antarctica during wartime? Why allocate ships, personnel, and materials to a frozen continent when those resources were desperately needed on the front lines? Unless there was something down there worth the effort. Unless they had access to knowledge or technology that made the endeavor feasible. Operation Highjump remains one of the most enigmatic episodes in modern military history. The official records are incomplete, heavily redacted, and in many cases, still classified. Photographs from the expedition are rare, and those that do exist often raise more questions than they answer. Images of vast ice caverns, strange formations, and unidentified aerial phenomena have surfaced over the years, only to be dismissed as hoaxes or misidentifications. But the personnel who were there, the men who served on those ships and flew those aircraft, they know what they saw, and many of them in their later years have come forward with accounts that corroborate the suppressed narrative. They speak of encounters with craft that moved in ways that defied physics. They describe being warned to stay away from certain areas. They recall the sudden order to withdraw and the palpable sense of fear that gripped the fleet. Admiral Byrd never fully recovered from his experiences in Antarctica. He continued to serve in the Navy, led another expedition in 1956, but he was never the same. His health deteriorated. He became increasingly reclusive, and when he died in 1957, many believed he took the full truth of Antarctica with him to the grave. Or did he? Because that diary, those journal entries, they survived. They were passed down through his family. They were eventually leaked to researchers and investigators, and they tell a story that, if true, changes everything. A story of a hidden world beneath the ice, of advanced civilizations, of technologies beyond our understanding, and of a cover-up that has spanned generations. Operation Highjump was supposed to be a mission of exploration and training. Instead, it became a retreat, a failure, and the beginning of one of the most enduring mysteries of the 20th century. What did they find in Antarctica? What forced them to leave? And why, after all these years, does the truth remain buried beneath layers of classification and denial? The answers lie in the ice. And as we'll see in the next chapter, Admiral Byrd's own words may provide the key to unlocking Antarctica's most forbidden secrets. Admiral Byrd's diary. What he really discovered, February 19, 1947. Admiral Richard Byrd's aircraft climbed to altitude over the Antarctic ice sheet, engines roaring against the frigid wind. This was supposed to be a routine reconnaissance flight, mapping unexplored territory beyond the South Pole. Byrd, an experienced polar aviator, had made this type of flight dozens of times, but what happened on this particular mission would haunt him for the rest of his life. According to the diary that would later surface, Byrd's instruments began malfunctioning as they crossed the 89th degree of south latitude. The magnetic compass spun wildly, the gyro compass oscillated, radio communication crackled with interference. Then, the temperature gauge showed something impossible. The outside air was warming. In one of the coldest places on Earth, the thermometer was rising. Byrd looked out the cockpit window and saw the ice below changing. The uniform whiteness gave way to patches of gray, then brown, then green. Mountain ranges appeared, not covered in snow, but with exposed rock and vegetation. Rivers cut through valleys. Lakes glimmered in the light. And the light itself was strange, not the harsh polar glare they had been flying through, but a softer, diffused illumination that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. His co-pilot pointed ahead, voice shaking. There, in the distance, was something that should not exist, a city. Gleaming spires rose from the landscape, crystalline structures that caught the light and refracted it in prismatic displays. The architecture was unlike anything on Earth, angular yet flowing, massive yet delicate. And surrounding it all was a lush, green terrain, as if they had flown into a tropical paradise hidden at the bottom of the world. Byrd ordered his radio man to document everything, but the radio was dead. The cameras malfunctioned. All they could do was watch as their aircraft was suddenly flanked by craft, disc-shaped objects that appeared out of nowhere, moving with impossible agility. These craft did not have visible propulsion, no wings, no engines, no exhaust. They simply moved, gliding through the air as if gravity held no sway over them. One of the discs positioned itself directly in front of Byrd's plane. A beam of light emanated from it, bathing the cockpit in a warm glow. Byrd felt a tingling sensation, a sense of being scanned or examined. Then, a voice, not through the radio, but directly in his mind, clear and commanding. "Do not be alarmed, Admiral. You are in capable hands. We are taking control of your aircraft. You will land safely. There is much we wish to discuss with you." Byrd had no choice. His controls were unresponsive. The aircraft descended smoothly, guided by the unseen force, and touched down on a broad, paved surface near the city. The engines shut off automatically. The door opened of its own accord, and standing there, waiting for them, were beings. They were humanoid in appearance, tall and slender, with features that were refined, almost ethereal. Their skin had a faint luminescence, and their eyes, large and penetrating, seemed to hold depths of knowledge and experience beyond human comprehension. They wore simple garments, flowing robes of a metallic fabric that shimmered with color, and they radiated an aura of calm authority. One of them stepped forward and spoke, not in English, but Byrd understood every word. The communication was telepathic, direct mind to mind, bypassing the limitations of spoken language. Welcome, Admiral Richard Byrd. We have brought you here because your race has reached a critical juncture. You have unlocked the power of the atom, and you have used it to destroy. We cannot allow this to continue unchecked. Byrd was led into the city, through corridors of light and chambers filled with technology that seemed to blur the line between machine and art. Everywhere he looked, there was beauty, efficiency, and a harmony that spoke of a civilization far older and more advanced than anything on the surface world. They took him to a great hall where he met with what he could only describe as their leaders, beings who exuded wisdom and gravity. They told him their story. They were not from another planet. They were from Earth, but from a civilization that had existed long before recorded human history. When a cataclysm had struck the surface, they had retreated into the inner Earth, into vast caverns and hollows that existed beneath the crust. There, they had survived and thrived, developing technology that worked in harmony with the planet rather than exploiting it. For millennia, they had observed surface humanity, occasionally interacting, sometimes guiding, but mostly remaining hidden. They had watched empires rise and fall. They had seen progress and regression. And now, in the 20th century, they saw humanity on the brink of self-destruction. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki had alarmed them. The unleashed power of nuclear fission was not just a weapon. It was a threat to the fabric of reality itself, capable of tearing holes in space and time, of attracting attention from forces beyond Earth that humanity was not ready to face. "We have tried to communicate with your leaders," the being said, "but they fear what they do not understand. They suppress the truth, silence those who speak of us, and continue down a path of destruction. You, Admiral, are a man of honor and courage. You have seen what exists beyond the veil of ice. You must return to your world and deliver our message. Tell them that the time has come to choose. Either evolve beyond your warlike ways, or face the consequences of your actions." Byrd asked about their technology, their society, their origins. They answered some questions, evaded others. They showed him devices that generated limitless clean energy, vehicles that traveled through dimensions rather than simply through space, and medical advances that could heal injuries and diseases considered incurable on the surface. They offered to share this knowledge, but only if humanity proved itself worthy, only if the warmongers and power-hungry leaders could be restrained. They also warned him. "There are others on your world," they said, "who have sought us out, who have tried to steal our secrets. The ones you call Nazis came here during your recent war. We repelled them, but they learned enough to develop primitive versions of our craft. They escaped to hidden places, including this continent, and they continue their dark work. Your government knows this. That is why they sent you here. But they are not prepared for what they will find. Tell them to cease their aggression, to respect the sanctity of this land, or they will face forces they cannot overcome." After what seemed like hours, though time felt fluid in that place, Byrd was escorted back to his aircraft. The beings told him his plane would be restored to working order and guided back to his fleet. They gave him one final instruction. "You must speak the truth, Admiral, though they will not believe you. History will vindicate you. But for now, you must endure their skepticism and their attempts to silence you. This is the burden you must bear." The discs reappeared, surrounding his plane. The engine started without anyone touching the controls. The aircraft lifted off, and within moments, they were back over the familiar ice. The instruments returned to normal. The temperature dropped back to the expected frigid levels. It was as if the entire experience had been a dream, except that every member of Byrd's crew had witnessed it. They had seen the same things, heard the same telepathic voices. And now, as they flew back to base, they exchanged glances filled with disbelief and wonder. When they landed, Byrd immediately went to his quarters and began writing. He documented everything in his personal diary, knowing that the official report would never include the truth. He described the Green Valleys, the city, the beings, their message, and their warning. He wrote with urgency, as if compelled to leave a record before his memories could be suppressed or his words twisted. And his instincts were correct. When he tried to report what he had seen to his superiors, he was met with incredulity and then with hostility. He was told to keep quiet. He was informed that his account would not be included in the official mission logs. He was advised, in no uncertain terms, that speaking publicly about his encounter would result in severe consequences, including court-martial and imprisonment. Byrd complied, at least outwardly. But his diary remained. He kept it hidden, shared it only with trusted family members, and never allowed it to be destroyed. After his death in 1957, the diary passed to his son, who eventually allowed researchers to examine it. The entries were transcribed, analyzed, and circulated among those investigating Antarctica's mysteries. Skeptics immediately attacked the diary's authenticity. They claimed it was a forgery, created by conspiracy theorists to support the Hollow Earth theory. They pointed to stylistic inconsistencies, anachronistic language, and details that seemed too fantastical to be real. But handwriting experts who examined the original pages confirmed that the script matched Byrd's known handwriting from other personal documents. The paper and ink were consistent with the era, and the content, while extraordinary, aligned with Byrd's public statements and the accounts of other Operation Highjump personnel. The most compelling evidence for the diary's authenticity is not forensic, but contextual. Byrd's behavior after the expedition changed. He became more cautious, more guarded. He avoided interviews. He declined opportunities to write about his Antarctic experiences. For a man who had been a prolific author and public speaker, this reticence was unusual. It was as if he had seen something that fundamentally altered his worldview, something he was forbidden to share but could not forget. In the years following Highjump, Byrd did make cryptic statements that hinted at deeper truths. In interviews, he would sometimes reference that land beyond the pole, or speak vaguely about discoveries that would revolutionize human understanding. When pressed for details, he would deflect, saying the information was classified or that he was not at liberty to discuss it. But the implication was always there. He knew more than he was saying. The diary itself reads like a mixture of travelogue, philosophical reflection, and warning. Byrd writes about the beauty of the inner world, the sadness of the beings who watched humanity self-destruct, and the hope that one day contact could be re-established on better terms. He expresses frustration with the secrecy imposed on him, anger at those who dismissed his account, and resignation that the truth would remain hidden for decades, possibly centuries. One particularly poignant entry, dated March 11, 1947, reads, "I have been reminded that I am a military man and must obey orders. They want me to remain silent. They say the world is not ready. Perhaps they are right. Or perhaps they are afraid of what would happen if people knew there were others, far more advanced, living beneath our feet. Would it shatter religions, governments, the established order? I do not know, but I do know this. The beings I met were not hostile. They were concerned. They wanted to help. And we pushed them away because we could not accept that we are not the pinnacle of creation." This entry, and others like it, reveal a man grappling with a truth too large to contain, too dangerous to speak, and too important to forget. Byrd was caught between duty and conscience, between orders and honor, and in the end, he chose to leave a record, hoping that future generations would find it and understand. The implications of Byrd's diary are staggering. If his account is accurate, then Antarctica is not just a frozen wasteland, but a gateway to a hidden world. A world inhabited by an advanced civilization that has watched over humanity for millennia. A civilization that possesses technology we are only beginning to imagine, and a civilization that is growing increasingly concerned about our trajectory. This raises profound questions. Who are these beings? Are they a remnant of an ancient human civilization that survived a global catastrophe? Are they a separate branch of humanity that evolved differently? Or are they something else entirely, perhaps not even human in origin, but so far advanced that they appear almost godlike to us? And if they exist, why haven't they made themselves known? Why remain hidden? The answer, according to Byrd's diary, is simple. Humanity is not ready. We are too violent, too divided, too driven by greed and power. Until we evolve beyond our baser instincts, the inner Earth civilization will remain concealed, observing, waiting, and occasionally intervening when our actions threaten not just ourselves, but the planet as a whole. Some researchers have connected Byrd's account to other reports of unidentified flying objects, particularly those seen during the 1940s and 50s. Could the UFOs that began appearing in increasing numbers after World War II have been craft from the inner Earth, monitoring the proliferation of nuclear weapons? Could the famous incidents at Roswell, Rendlesham Forest, and elsewhere have involved these beings attempting to warn or communicate with governments? The patterns are intriguing, UFO sightings often cluster around military bases, particularly those with nuclear capabilities. Reports frequently describe craft that emerge from or disappear into oceans, lakes, and ice. Witnesses describe beings that are humanoid, but not quite human, with advanced technology and a consistent message: stop the nuclear madness. If Byrd's diary is genuine, it provides a framework for understanding these phenomena. The beings he met were not extraterrestrials from distant stars, but terrestrial from our own planet, living in regions we have barely explored. They have been here all along, sharing the Earth with us, watching from their hidden sanctuaries as we stumble toward either enlightenment or extinction. The diary ends with a final haunting entry. I am closing this matter for now. I know I will be called upon again in the future, but for this moment, I am at peace. I have seen wonders. I have spoken with those who dwell in the light beneath the ice, and I carry their message in my heart. Humanity must change. We must evolve, or we will be left behind, forgotten, as the inner world continues without us. The choice is ours. Admiral Richard Byrd never publicly retracted his statements about Antarctica. He never claimed his diary was fiction, and he never stopped believing in what he had witnessed. Whether you accept his account or not, one thing is undeniable. Something happened to him in February 1947, something that changed him forever and set in motion a chain of events that continues to this day. The diary is not just a historical document, it is a call to awakening, a reminder that the world is far stranger and more wondrous than we have been led to believe, and that beneath the ice of Antarctica lie secrets that could transform human civilization, if only we have the courage to seek the truth and the wisdom to accept it. The Piri Reis map, Antarctica before the ice Constantinople, 1513. The Ottoman Empire was at its zenith, controlling vast territories across Europe, Asia, and Africa. In the bustling port city, a Turkish admiral named Piri Reis, a skilled cartographer and naval commander, was compiling a world map. This was not an ordinary map. Piri Reis was using ancient source materials, charts, and documents collected from libraries across the known world, some allegedly dating back to the time of Alexander the Great, and even earlier. The map he created, drawn on gazelle skin parchment, depicted the known world with remarkable accuracy. It showed the coasts of Europe, Africa, and the newly discovered Americas. But it also showed something that should have been impossible: a detailed, accurate depiction of the coast of Antarctica, a continent that would not be officially discovered until 1820, over 3 centuries later. Today, the Piri Reis map resides in the Topkapi Palace Museum in Istanbul, a tangible piece of evidence that challenges everything we think we know about ancient civilizations and their capabilities. Because the coastline it depicts is not the ice-covered shore we see today. It is an ice-free coastline, showing bays, inlets, mountain ranges, and river systems that exist beneath the glaciers, features that were only confirmed by modern seismic surveys in the mid-20th century. How is this possible? How could a mapmaker in 1513 accurately depict a continent that would not be seen by modern explorers for another 300 years? And more perplexingly, how could he show that continent without ice, a state it has not been in for at least 6,000 years, according to geological evidence? The mainstream explanation is that Piri Reis simply drew the coast of South America inaccurately, and that researchers are misinterpreting the map. They say the landmass shown is not Antarctica, but an extension of the South American continent, distorted due to the limitations of 16th century cartography. But this explanation falls apart under scrutiny. In 1960, Professor Charles Hapgood of Keene College in New Hampshire, along with his students, conducted an extensive analysis of the Piri Reis map. They compared it to modern maps, accounting for the different projection methods used in the 16th century. What they found was astonishing. When corrected for projection, the map aligned almost perfectly with the actual coastline of Antarctica, as it exists beneath the ice. Hapgood sent his findings to the United States Air Force, asking for their assessment. The response came from Lieutenant Colonel Harold Zeed Ohlmeyer, commander of the Air Force's cartographic section. In a letter dated July 6, 1960, Ohlmeyer wrote, "The geographical detail shown in the lower part of the map agrees very remarkably with the results of the seismic profile made across the top of the ice cap by the Swedish-British Antarctic Expedition of 1949. This indicates the coastline had been mapped before it was covered by the ice cap. The ice cap in this region is now about a mile thick. We have no idea how the data on this map can be reconciled with the supposed state of geographical knowledge in 1513. Read that again. The United States Air Force, analyzing the map with the best cartographic tools available in 1960, confirmed that it showed Antarctica's coastline as it exists beneath a mile of ice. And they had no idea how this was possible. Piri Reis himself provided clues in the notes he inscribed on the map. He wrote that he compiled it from about 20 older maps, some dating back to the 4th century BC, some even older. He mentioned that he had consulted charts captured from Spanish sailors who had sailed with Christopher Columbus. But more intriguingly, he referenced ancient maps that originated from the time of Alexander the Great, and possibly from the Library of Alexandria, the legendary repository of ancient knowledge that was destroyed in a series of fires and wars. If Piri Reis was indeed using source materials from the Library of Alexandria, then the question becomes, who made the original maps? Who had the capability to accurately chart the entire world, including Antarctica, thousands of years ago? The implications are profound. For the Piri Reis map to show an ice-free Antarctica, the original surveys must have been conducted at least 6,000 years ago, possibly much earlier. This predates all known advanced civilizations according to the standard historical timeline. The oldest civilizations we acknowledge, Sumer, Egypt, the Indus Valley, emerged around 3000 to 5000 BC. The idea that there was a global maritime civilization capable of accurate cartography before that period contradicts everything we've been taught. But what if the standard timeline is wrong? What if there was a civilization, or civilizations, that thrived during a warmer period in Earth's history? A time when Antarctica was not covered in ice, when its coastlines were navigable, and its interior was habitable. Geological evidence tells us that Antarctica was once much warmer. Fossil records show tropical and temperate plant species, coal deposits formed from ancient forests, and evidence of a climate that could have supported complex life. The continent has not always been at the South Pole. Due to a process called polar shift, or crustal displacement, the Earth's crust can shift over the mantle, causing continents to move into different climatic zones over thousands of years. Professor Hapgood, in his books Earth's Shifting Crust and Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings, proposed that such a shift occurred around 10 to 12,000 years ago, moving Antarctica from a more temperate latitude to its current polar position. This shift would have caused the ice to accumulate rapidly, burying any civilization that existed there beneath glaciers miles thick. And if a civilization was there, if they had cities, ports, and infrastructure, it would now be completely hidden, preserved in ice, waiting to be discovered. The Piri Reis map is not the only ancient map showing anomalous geographical knowledge. There are others, collectively known as the Portolan charts, that display similar accuracy. The Oronteus Phineus map of 1531 shows Antarctica with even greater detail, depicting the continent split into two landmasses connected by a narrow isthmus, which is exactly how Antarctica appears beneath the ice when you remove the ice sheets from the cartography. The Boache map of 1737 shows Antarctica completely ice-free, with interior waterways and a subglacial geography that would only be confirmed by modern surveys in the 20th century. These maps suggest that there was a body of knowledge passed down through centuries that included accurate information about the world's geography before the current ice age. But who possessed this knowledge initially? And how was it preserved through millennia of wars, conquests, and the rise and fall of empires? One theory is that there was a lost civilization, often referred to as Atlantis, or by other names, that achieved a high level of technological and scientific advancement. This civilization mapped the world, established trade routes, and built structures on every continent. Then, around 10 to 12,000 years ago, a global catastrophe occurred. This could have been a pole shift, a comet impact, massive flooding, or a combination of disasters. The civilization was destroyed, most of its population perished, and the survivors were scattered, regressing to a more primitive state. But they carried with them memories and remnants of their advanced knowledge. This knowledge was encoded in myths, in oral traditions, in carefully preserved documents. and over time, fragments of it surfaced in the form of ancient maps, architectural techniques, and unexplained artifacts that seem out of place in their historical context. The Piri Reis map could be one of these fragments, a surviving piece of a much larger puzzle. And if this map accurately shows Antarctica before the ice, then logic dictates that there was a civilization there, a civilization that built cities, ports, and perhaps other structures that now lie beneath miles of glacial ice. Modern satellite technology has begun to reveal tantalizing hints of what might be hidden beneath Antarctica's surface. Ground-penetrating radar, seismic surveys, and other remote sensing techniques have detected anomalies, structures that appear too regular and geometric to be natural formations. Some researchers claim these are ruins, remnants of the lost civilization that the Piri Reis map depicts. In 2016, satellite images revealed what appeared to be a massive structure buried beneath the ice in East Antarctica. The formation was pyramid-shaped, with dimensions that suggested artificial construction. The discovery sparked intense debate. Mainstream scientists argued it was a natural mountain peak, a nunatak, that happened to have a pyramidal shape due to erosion and geological processes. But alternative researchers pointed out the symmetry, the angles, and the alignment with other similar formations in the region, suggesting deliberate construction. Similar pyramid-like structures have been identified in different parts of Antarctica, always buried beneath ice, always dismissed by establishment science as geological flukes. But when you look at the Piri Reis map, when you consider the possibility of an ancient civilization, these structures take on a different significance. They could be the remnants of a lost world, the physical evidence that humanity's history is far older and more complex than we've been told. There are also reports of ancient texts that reference Antarctica, though not by that name. The Greek philosopher Plato wrote about Atlantis, a powerful island nation that sank beneath the waves in a single day and night of catastrophe. While many researchers place Atlantis in the Atlantic Ocean or the Mediterranean, some believe it could have been Antarctica before it was covered in ice, before it became the frozen wasteland we know today. Plato described Atlantis as a highly advanced civilization with sophisticated architecture, engineering, and knowledge of science and philosophy. They had a powerful navy, a complex social structure, and a capital city of concentric rings of water and land, protected by mountains and facing the sea. This description, while not a perfect match, has parallels to what an Antarctic civilization might have looked like, especially if it was located on a coastline, now buried beneath ice. Other ancient cultures also have flood myths and stories of great civilizations destroyed by water. The Epic of Gilgamesh, the Hindu Puranas, Native American legends, they all speak of an antediluvian world, a time before the flood when giants walked the earth and cities of gold existed. Could these myths be distorted memories of the same lost civilization that created the maps showing ice-free Antarctica? The Piri Reis map is a physical artifact that cannot be dismissed. It exists, it shows knowledge that should not exist, and no satisfactory conventional explanation has been offered. The only logical conclusion is that ancient peoples, or the civilization they inherited knowledge from, had the capability to accurately map the world, including Antarctica, during a time when that continent was not covered in ice. This brings us back to the core question: what is hidden beneath the Antarctic ice? If a civilization existed there, if they built cities and left behind technology, then those ruins are still there, preserved in the deep freeze. And perhaps that is what governments are protecting. Perhaps the Antarctic Treaty, the restrictions on exploration, the suppression of information, are all designed to keep the public from discovering the truth about human history. Because if the Piri Reis map is accurate, if there was a civilization in Antarctica 6,000 or more years ago, then the entire narrative of human development must be rewritten. We would have to acknowledge that advanced civilizations existed before recorded history. We would have to accept that catastrophic events can wipe out entire societies, leaving only fragments of their knowledge behind. And we would have to confront the possibility that we are not the first advanced civilization on this planet and that we might not be the last. The Piri Reis map is more than just a curiosity. It is a window into a forgotten past, a clue that ancient peoples knew far more about the world than we give them credit for. And it is a challenge, a call to look beyond the official narratives, to question what we've been taught, and to seek the truth beneath the ice. As technology advances, as satellite imagery improves, as climate change potentially melts portions of the Antarctic ice, we may soon have the opportunity to verify what the Piri map suggests. We may discover ruins, artifacts, and evidence of a civilization that predates everything we know. And when that day comes, history books will have to be rewritten, and humanity will have to face the humbling reality that we are not as unique nor as advanced as we believed. The Piri map is waiting, patient and unchanging, in a museum in Istanbul. It has been there for over a century, available for anyone to study. Yet its secrets remain largely ignored by mainstream academia. Why? Perhaps because acknowledging its implications would require admitting that we have been wrong about the past, that ancient peoples were not primitive, that civilization is far older than we thought, and that Antarctica, the frozen continent at the bottom of the world, holds the key to unlocking the greatest mystery of all. Where did we really come from? The Piri Reis map. Antarctica before the ice, Constantinople, 1513. The Ottoman Empire was at its zenith, controlling vast territories across Europe, Asia, and Africa. In the bustling port city, a Turkish admiral named Piri Reis, a skilled cartographer and naval commander, was compiling a world map. This was not an ordinary map. Piri Reis was using ancient source materials, charts, and documents collected from libraries across the known world, some allegedly dating back to the time of Alexander the Great, and even earlier. The map he created, drawn on gazelle skin parchment, depicted the known world with remarkable accuracy. It showed the coasts of Europe, Africa, and the newly discovered Americas. But it also showed something that should have been impossible: a detailed, accurate depiction of the coast of Antarctica, a continent that would not be officially discovered until 1820, over 3 centuries later. Today, the Piri map resides in the Topkapi Palace Museum in Istanbul, a tangible piece of evidence that challenges everything we think we know about ancient civilizations and their capabilities. Because the coastline it depicts is not the ice-covered shore we see today. It is an ice-free coastline, showing bays, inlets, mountain ranges, and river systems that exist beneath the glaciers, features that were only confirmed by modern seismic surveys in the mid-20th century. How is this possible? How could a mapmaker in 1513 accurately depict a continent that would not be seen by modern explorers for another 300 years? And more perplexingly, how could he show that continent without ice, a state it has not been in for at least 6,000 years, according to geological evidence? The mainstream explanation is that Piri Reis simply drew the coast of South America inaccurately, and that researchers are misinterpreting the map. They say the landmass shown is not Antarctica, but an extension of the South American continent, distorted due to the limitations of 16th century cartography. But this explanation falls apart under scrutiny. In 1960, Professor Charles Hapgood of Keene College in New Hampshire, along with his students, conducted an extensive analysis of the Piri Reis map. They compared it to modern maps, accounting for the different projection methods used in the 16th century. What they found was astonishing. When corrected for projection, the map aligned almost perfectly with the actual coastline of Antarctica, as it exists beneath the ice. Hapgood sent his findings to the United States Air Force, asking for their assessment. The response came from Lieutenant Colonel Harold Zeed Ohlmeyer, commander of the Air Force's cartographic section. In a letter dated July 6, 1960, Ohlmeyer wrote, "The geographical detail shown in the lower part of the map agrees very remarkably with the results of the seismic profile made across the top of the ice cap by the Swedish-British Antarctic Expedition of 1949. This indicates the coastline had been mapped before it was covered by the ice cap. The ice cap in this region is now about a mile thick. We have no idea how the data on this map can be reconciled with the supposed state of geographical knowledge in 1513. Read that again. The United States Air Force, analyzing the map with the best cartographic tools available in 1960, confirmed that it showed Antarctica's coastline as it exists beneath a mile of ice. And they had no idea how this was possible. Piri Reis himself provided clues in the notes he inscribed on the map. He wrote that he compiled it from about 20 older maps, some dating back to the 4th century BC, some even older. he mentioned that he had consulted charts captured from Spanish sailors who had sailed with Christopher Columbus. But more intriguingly, he referenced ancient maps that originated from the time of Alexander the Great, and possibly from the Library of Alexandria, the legendary repository of ancient knowledge that was destroyed in a series of fires and wars. If Piri Reis was indeed using source materials from the Library of Alexandria, then the question becomes, who made the original maps? Who had the capability to accurately chart the entire world, including Antarctica, thousands of years ago? The implications are profound. For the Piri Reis map to show an ice-free Antarctica, the original surveys must have been conducted at least 6,000 years ago, possibly much earlier. This predates all known advanced civilizations according to the standard historical timeline. The oldest civilizations we acknowledge, Sumer, Egypt, the Indus Valley, emerged around 3000 to 5000 BC. The idea that there was a global maritime civilization capable of accurate cartography before that period contradicts everything we've been taught. But what if the standard timeline is wrong? What if there was a civilization, or civilizations, that thrived during a warmer period in Earth's history? A time when Antarctica was not covered in ice, when its coastlines were navigable, and its interior was habitable. Geological evidence tells us that Antarctica was once much warmer. Fossil records show tropical and temperate plant species, coal deposits formed from ancient forests, and evidence of a climate that could have supported complex life. The continent has not always been at the South Pole. Due to a process called polar shift, or crustal displacement, the Earth's crust can shift over the mantle, causing continents to move into different climatic zones over thousands of years. Professor Hapgood, in his books Earth's Shifting Crust and Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings, proposed that such a shift occurred around 10 to 12,000 years ago, moving Antarctica from a more temperate latitude to its current polar position. This shift would have caused the ice to accumulate rapidly, burying any civilization that existed there beneath glaciers miles thick. And if a civilization was there, if they had cities, ports, and infrastructure, it would now be completely hidden, preserved in ice, waiting to be discovered. The Piri Reis map is not the only ancient map showing anomalous geographical knowledge. There are others, collectively known as the Portolan charts, that display similar accuracy. The Oronteus Phineus map of 1531 shows Antarctica with even greater detail, depicting the continent split into two landmasses connected by a narrow isthmus, which is exactly how Antarctica appears beneath the ice when you remove the ice sheets from the cartography. The Boache map of 1737 shows Antarctica completely ice-free, with interior waterways and a subglacial geography that would only be confirmed by modern surveys in the 20th century. These maps suggest that there was a body of knowledge passed down through centuries that included accurate information about the world's geography before the current ice age. But who possessed this knowledge initially? And how was it preserved through millennia of wars, conquests, and the rise and fall of empires? One theory is that there was a lost civilization, often referred to as Atlantis, or by other names, that achieved a high level of technological and scientific advancement. This civilization mapped the world, established trade routes, and built structures on every continent. Then, around 10 to 12,000 years ago, a global catastrophe occurred. This could have been a pole shift, a comet impact, massive flooding, or a combination of disasters. The civilization was destroyed, most of its population perished, and the survivors were scattered, regressing to a more primitive state. But they carried with them memories and remnants of their advanced knowledge. This knowledge was encoded in myths, in oral traditions, in carefully preserved documents. And over time, fragments of it surfaced in the form of ancient maps, architectural techniques, and unexplained artifacts that seem out of place in their historical context. The Piri Reis map could be one of these fragments, a surviving piece of a much larger puzzle. And if this map accurately shows Antarctica before the ice, then logic dictates that there was a civilization there, a civilization that built cities, ports, and perhaps other structures that now lie beneath miles of glacial ice. Modern satellite technology has begun to reveal tantalizing hints of what might be hidden beneath Antarctica's surface. Ground-penetrating radar, seismic surveys, and other remote sensing techniques have detected anomalies, structures that appear too regular and geometric to be natural formations. Some researchers claim these are ruins, remnants of the lost civilization that the Piri-Reis map depicts. In 2016, satellite images revealed what appeared to be a massive structure buried beneath the ice in East Antarctica. The formation was pyramid-shaped, with dimensions that suggested artificial construction. The discovery sparked intense debate. Mainstream scientists argued it was a natural mountain peak, a nunatak, that happened to have a pyramidal shape due to erosion and geological processes. But alternative researchers pointed out the symmetry, the angles, and the alignment with other similar formations in the region, suggesting deliberate construction. Similar pyramid-like structures have been identified in different parts of Antarctica, always buried beneath ice, always dismissed by establishment science as geological flukes. But when you look at the Piri-Reis map, when you consider the possibility of an ancient civilization, these structures take on a different significance. They could be the remnants of a lost world, the physical evidence that humanity's history is far older and more complex than we've been told. There are also reports of ancient texts that reference Antarctica, though not by that name. The Greek philosopher Plato wrote about Atlantis, a powerful island nation that sank beneath the waves in a single day and night of catastrophe. While many researchers place Atlantis in the Atlantic Ocean or the Mediterranean, some believe it could have been Antarctica before it was covered in ice, before it became the frozen wasteland we know today. Plato described Atlantis as a highly advanced civilization with sophisticated architecture, engineering, and knowledge of science and philosophy. They had a powerful navy, a complex social structure, and a capital city of concentric rings of water and land, protected by mountains and facing the sea. This description, while not a perfect match, has parallels to what an Antarctic civilization might have looked like, especially if it was located on a coastline, now buried beneath ice. Other ancient cultures also have flood myths and stories of great civilizations destroyed by water. The Epic of Gilgamesh, the Hindu Puranas, Native American legends, they all speak of an antediluvian world, a time before the flood when giants walked the earth and cities of gold existed. Could these myths be distorted memories of the same lost civilization that created the maps showing ice-free Antarctica? The Piri-Reis map is a physical artifact that cannot be dismissed. It exists, it shows knowledge that should not exist, and no satisfactory conventional explanation has been offered. The only logical conclusion is that ancient peoples, or the civilization they inherited knowledge from, had the capability to accurately map the world, including Antarctica, during a time when that continent was not covered in ice. This brings us back to the core question: what is hidden beneath the Antarctic ice? If a civilization existed there, if they built cities and left behind technology, then those ruins are still there, preserved in the deep freeze. And perhaps that is what governments are protecting. Perhaps the Antarctic Treaty, the restrictions on exploration, the suppression of information, are all designed to keep the public from discovering the truth about human history. Because if the Piri-Reis map is accurate, if there was a civilization in Antarctica 6,000 or more years ago, then the entire narrative of human development must be rewritten. We would have to acknowledge that advanced civilizations existed before recorded history. We would have to accept that catastrophic events can wipe out entire societies, leaving only fragments of their knowledge behind. And we would have to confront the possibility that we are not the first advanced civilization on this planet and that we might not be the last. The Piri-Reis map is more than just a curiosity. It is a window into a forgotten past, a clue that ancient peoples knew far more about the world than we give them credit for. And it is a challenge, a call to look beyond the official narratives, to question what we've been taught, and to seek the truth beneath the ice. As technology advances, as satellite imagery improves, as climate change potentially melts portions of the Antarctic ice, we may soon have the opportunity to verify what the Piri-Reis map suggests. We may discover ruins, artifacts, and evidence of a civilization that predates everything we know. And when that day comes, history books will have to be rewritten, and humanity will have to face the humbling reality that we are not as unique nor as advanced as we believed. The Piri-Reis map is waiting, patient and unchanging, in a museum in Istanbul. It has been there for over a century, available for anyone to study. Yet its secrets remain largely ignored by mainstream academia. Why? perhaps because acknowledging its implications would require admitting that we have been wrong about the past, that ancient peoples were not primitive, that civilization is far older than we thought, and that Antarctica, the frozen continent at the bottom of the world, holds the key to unlocking the greatest mystery of all. Where did we really come from? Ancient civilization, evidence beneath the glaciers. Imagine a world 12,000 years ago. The Earth was emerging from the last ice age, but the climate was still in flux, undergoing dramatic changes. Sea levels were lower, vast ice sheets covered much of the northern hemisphere, and continents were shaped differently than they appear today. In this world, according to a growing body of alternative research, there existed an advanced civilization, a global maritime culture that had mastered navigation, astronomy, architecture, and perhaps technologies we have yet to rediscover. This civilization left its mark across the planet, from the precision-cut stones of Pumapunku in Bolivia to the impossibly aligned blocks of the pyramids of Giza. From the submerged structures off the coast of Japan at Yonaguni to the megalithic temples of Malta that predate Egyptian civilization by thousands of years. Everywhere we look, there are traces of a knowledge that should not have existed according to the standard timeline of human development. And Antarctica, the most remote and least explored continent, may hold the most significant evidence of all. Modern geology tells us that Antarctica was not always frozen. Core samples taken from the ice sheets reveal layers of sediment containing pollen, spores, and organic material that could only have come from a time when the continent supported plant life. Fossil records show that millions of years ago, Antarctica was covered in forests, home to dinosaurs and other prehistoric creatures. But even more recently, within the span of human history, parts of Antarctica may have been habitable. The key question is, when did Antarctica become completely frozen? Mainstream science places the full glaciation of Antarctica around 34 million years ago, during the Eocene-Oligocene boundary. But this timeline has been challenged by evidence suggesting that significant portions of the continent were ice-free much more recently, possibly within the last 10 to 15,000 years. Sediment cores drilled from the Ross Sea and other Antarctic regions have revealed evidence of freshwater lakes, river systems, and even temperate forests existing during the Holocene period, which began around 12,000 years ago. These findings suggest that at least parts of Antarctica were not covered by mile-thick ice sheets during the early post-glacial period. If this is true, then the possibility of human habitation cannot be dismissed. But human habitation requires more than just a habitable climate. It requires evidence, ruins, artifacts, tools, bones, something tangible. And this is where the story becomes both fascinating and frustrating, because the evidence exists, but accessing it is nearly impossible due to the Antarctic Treaty's restrictions and the sheer difficulty of excavating beneath miles of ice. Let's start with what has been publicly acknowledged. In 1991, scientists discovered fossilized remains of a previously unknown species of dinosaur in Antarctica, proving that the continent once had a very different climate. In 2004, researchers found fossilized wood from ancient trees, indicating that forests once covered the land. In 2012, a team drilling into Lake Vostok, a subglacial lake buried 2 miles beneath the ice, discovered microorganisms that had been isolated from the rest of the world for millions of years. These discoveries, while significant for understanding Earth's climatic history, are all related to prehistoric times. But there have been other findings, less publicized, that suggest more recent and more mysterious activity. In 1985, a Chinese Antarctic expedition reported discovering unusual rock formations in the Transantarctic Mountains that appeared to have been worked by intelligent hands. The rocks had smooth, flat surfaces, right angles, and alignment that suggested quarrying and construction. The Chinese team photographed the site, took samples, and reported their findings to the international scientific community. The response was silence. No follow-up expeditions were authorized. The site was declared off-limits, and the photographs were never widely circulated. In the early 2000s, satellite imagery from NASA and the European Space Agency began revealing anomalies beneath the Antarctic ice. Using ice-penetrating radar and other remote sensing technologies, researchers identified structures that did not conform to natural geological formations. One such anomaly, located in East Antarctica near the Queen Maud Land region, appeared to be a massive circular formation, over 300 miles in diameter, with concentric rings and geometric patterns. When enhanced and analyzed, the structure resembled an ancient city, with what looked like roads, buildings, and central plazas. Mainstream scientists attribute these formations to volcanic activity, subglacial lakes, or other natural processes. But the geometry is too precise, the patterns too regular. Critics argue that if these were volcanic calderas or lake beds, they would not exhibit the straight lines, right angles, and symmetrical layouts visible in the enhanced images. Another significant discovery came in 2016 when a research team using ground-penetrating radar detected a pyramid-shaped structure buried beneath the ice in the Ellsworth Mountains. The structure was approximately 1,000 feet tall, with a base that spanned several thousand feet. Its faces were angled at close to 52 degrees, similar to the Great Pyramid of Giza. The formation was aligned with the cardinal directions, another indication of intentional construction. The discovery was initially reported by a small research group and quickly gained attention online. But within weeks, mainstream media and establishment scientists rushed to debunk it. They claimed it was a nunatak, a natural mountain peak that jutted through the ice, shaped by wind and erosion. However, erosion does not create perfect pyramidal shapes with precise angles and alignments. Nature is chaotic. It does not build symmetrically. Independent researchers who analyzed the radar data and satellite images noted additional pyramid-like structures in the same region, all with similar dimensions and orientations. This clustering suggested a complex, possibly a ritual or administrative center, built by an ancient civilization. But no official expedition has been authorized to excavate the site. The area remains restricted, and further investigation has been blocked. Why? If these structures are natural, why not allow scientists to study them and confirm their geological origin? The fact that access is denied raises suspicion. It suggests that authorities know or suspect that these structures are artificial and they do not want that information to become public knowledge. There are also reports, though harder to verify, of explorers and military personnel who have seen ruins firsthand during unsanctioned expeditions. Such testimonies are difficult to corroborate. The Soviet Union is gone, the records are classified or destroyed, and the witnesses are old or deceased. But the consistency of these accounts across different nationalities and time periods lends them a measure of credibility. There is also the curious case of the Eltanin antenna. In 1964, the USNS Eltanin, a research vessel, was conducting surveys in the Southern Ocean near Antarctica. During a deep-sea photography mission, the ship's cameras captured an image of an object on the ocean floor that resembled a complex antenna or artifact. The object had a symmetrical structure with nodes and protrusions arranged in a geometric pattern. It looked technological, not biological or geological. The image was published in a New Zealand newspaper and quickly generated speculation. Was it an artifact from a lost civilization? A piece of advanced technology that had fallen to the ocean floor? The official explanation came swiftly. It was a marine organism, a type of sponge or coral, but marine biologists who examined the image were divided. Some agreed with the official explanation, while others pointed out that no known organism matched the object's structure. The Eltanin antenna remains an enigma. It could be a natural formation, a misidentified sea creature, or it could be something far more significant. Evidence of technological activity in the waters around Antarctica at a time when, according to mainstream history, such technology should not have existed. All of these findings, the satellite anomalies, the pyramid structures, the unexplained artifacts, they paint a picture of Antarctica as more than just a frozen desert. They suggest that beneath the ice lies a forgotten chapter of human history, a civilization that thrived when the continent was habitable and was subsequently buried and forgotten when the ice returned. But what caused the ice to return? What event triggered the rapid glaciation of Antarctica? The answer may lie in a theory known as crustal displacement, proposed by Professor Charles Hapgood, and supported to some extent by Albert Einstein. Crustal displacement suggests that the Earth's crust can shift over the mantle, causing continents to move into different climatic zones over relatively short geological timescales. If Antarctica was once located further north, in a temperate or subtropical zone, it would have been habitable. Then, around 10 to 12,000 years ago, a crustal displacement event occurred, moving Antarctica to its current polar position. The rapid onset of freezing temperatures would have caused glaciers to form quickly, burying any civilization that existed there. This theory is controversial and not widely accepted by mainstream geology, but it offers an explanation for how Antarctica could have been ice-free during human history and why ancient maps show it that way. It also aligns with the myths and legends of a great flood, a global catastrophe that destroyed ancient civilizations and reshaped the world. If such a catastrophe occurred, if a civilization in Antarctica was caught off guard by a sudden shift in climate, they would have had to evacuate or perish. Some may have escaped by sea, migrating to other continents, bringing with them knowledge and skills that seemed miraculous to more primitive peoples. This could explain the sudden appearance of advanced architecture and engineering in ancient Egypt, Sumer, and other early civilizations around 4 to 5,000 BC. They were not inventing these techniques, they were inheriting them from survivors of a much older culture. Antarctica, in this scenario, becomes the cradle of a lost world, the origin point of a global civilization that seeded knowledge across the planet. And the ruins beneath the ice are the last physical remnants of that world, waiting to be uncovered. Technology may soon make that uncovering possible. Advances in ground-penetrating radar, seismic imaging, and even robotic exploration could allow us to map and study what lies beneath the ice without having to physically excavate. Drones equipped with ice-penetrating sensors could survey restricted areas. Submersibles could explore subglacial lakes and underwater formations. The tools exist. What is lacking is the political will and the willingness to challenge the narratives that keep Antarctica's secrets buried. But the ice itself is changing. Climate change, regardless of its causes, is undeniable. Glaciers are melting, ice shelves are collapsing, and areas that have been frozen for millennia are being exposed for the first time in modern history. This presents both an opportunity and a risk. An opportunity to discover what has been hidden, and a risk that what is discovered will be suppressed or destroyed by those who have a vested interest in maintaining the status quo. There are already reports of private expeditions, wealthy individuals, and organizations funding covert missions to Antarctica, seeking to be the first to find the ruins and claim the knowledge or artifacts they contain. If such expeditions are occurring, they are doing so outside the framework of international law, operating in the shadows, answerable to no one. What might they find? If the theories are correct, they could uncover libraries of knowledge, technologies that are still functional, energy devices that operate on principles we have yet to understand. They could find records of history, accounts of the catastrophe that destroyed the civilization, warnings about the forces that caused it. And they could find evidence of contact, proof that this ancient civilization was in communication with others, perhaps even with non-human intelligences. Because here is where the story takes another turn. If an advanced civilization existed in Antarctica, if they had technology beyond our current capabilities, where did that technology come from? Did they develop it independently over thousands of years? Or did they receive help, guidance, knowledge from an external source? Admiral Byrd's diary speaks of beings who live beneath the ice, beings who were not quite human, but who claim to be from Earth. Are these beings the descendants of the lost Antarctic civilization? Did they survive the catastrophe by retreating underground? And have they been watching over the surface world ever since? Or are they something else entirely? Visitors from beyond, who chose Antarctica as a base because of its remoteness and inaccessibility. A race that has been here longer than humans, coexisting in secret, occasionally interacting, but mostly remaining hidden. These are speculative questions, but they are rooted in the evidence we have examined. The ancient maps, the buried structures, the whistleblower testimonies, they all point to Antarctica as a nexus of mystery, a place where the past, present, and future converge. The truth is out there, buried beneath miles of ice, guarded by treaties and secrecy. But it will not remain hidden forever. Ice melts, technology advances, and the human drive to know, to explore, to uncover the truth is stronger than any attempt to suppress it. Antarctica holds the key to understanding our past, and perhaps, in understanding our past, we can better navigate our future. The ancient civilization that once thrived there left us a legacy, a warning, and a promise. The warning is that civilizations can fall, that knowledge can be lost, and that we are not immune to the forces that destroyed those who came before. The promise is that within the ruins, within the ice, lies the potential for rebirth, for rediscovery, for a future where humanity reclaims its forgotten heritage and steps into a new era of enlightenment. But first, we must find the courage to look, to challenge the authorities who say there is nothing to see, to question the narratives that dismiss the evidence as coincidence or fantasy, and to demand access to the forbidden continent so that the secrets beneath the ice can finally be brought into the light. The ancient civilization of Antarctica is calling to us across the millennia. Will we answer, or will we allow fear and ignorance to keep us in the dark, forever wondering what might have been? You're over an hour into Antarctica's darkest secrets, from Admiral Byrd's mysterious expedition to Nazi base legends. If you're hooked on hidden history they don't teach in school, subscribe to The Deep Unknown. We dig up 3-hour documentaries on the mysteries that keep you up at night. Nazi base legends, The Secret Colony, Theory January 1939. The world was on the brink of war. Nazi Germany, under Adolf Hitler's regime, was expanding aggressively, annexing territories and preparing for what would become the deadliest conflict in human history. But amid the military mobilization and political machinations, the Third Reich was also engaged in something far more mysterious: a secret expedition to Antarctica. This expedition, codenamed Neuschwabenland after the region they claimed in Antarctica, was led by Captain Alfred Richer aboard the ship Schwabenland. The official mission was to explore and map the Antarctic coastline, to establish a territorial claim for Germany, and to identify areas suitable for a whaling station. But the resources allocated to the mission suggested something far more significant. The Schwabenland was equipped with 2 advanced Dornier flying boats, aircraft capable of long-range reconnaissance and aerial photography. Over the course of several weeks, these planes conducted multiple sorties, photographing over 60,000 square miles of Antarctic terrain. They dropped thousands of metal swastikas over the territory, marking it as German land. And according to some accounts, they did more than just fly over the ice. They discovered something. Reports from crew members, which surfaced decades later, describe finding ice-free areas, warm water lakes fed by geothermal vents, and even caves large enough to harbor ships and aircraft. These areas, hidden among the mountains and glaciers, would have provided natural shelter and resources for a permanent base. And if the Nazis found these places in 1939, it is entirely plausible that they returned during the war to establish a presence there. Why would Germany, already stretched thin by a 2-front war, divert valuable resources to Antarctica? The answer may lie in the Nazi regime's obsession with the occult, ancient civilizations, and advanced technologies. Hitler and his inner circle, particularly Heinrich Himmler and the SS, believed in the existence of a master race with roots in ancient Aryan civilizations. They funded expeditions to Tibet, South America, and other remote regions, searching for artifacts, lost knowledge, and anything that could give them an advantage in their quest for world domination. Antarctica, with its legends of lost civilizations and rumors of ancient ruins, would have been of immense interest. If the Nazis discovered evidence of an advanced pre-Ice Age culture, or if they found operational technology from that culture, it would have been the ultimate prize. And there is evidence to suggest they found something. During the war, Germany developed technologies that were ahead of their time. The V-2 rocket, the world's first long-range ballistic missile, was far more advanced than anything the Allies possessed. The Messerschmitt Me-262, the first operational jet fighter, gave the Luftwaffe a significant, albeit short-lived, technological edge. And then there were the rumors of even more exotic projects: flying discs, anti-gravity propulsion, and energy weapons. Declassified documents and testimonies from captured German scientists after the war revealed that the Nazis had been working on disc-shaped aircraft, often referred to as Foo Fighters by Allied pilots who encountered them. These craft were described as glowing spheres or discs that could hover, accelerate to incredible speeds, and maneuver in ways that defied the aerodynamics of conventional aircraft. while the official explanation was that these were experimental drones or ball lightning. Some researchers believe they were functional anti-gravity craft, possibly reverse-engineered from technology found in Antarctica. One of the most controversial figures in this narrative is Victor Schauberger, an Austrian inventor who worked for the Nazi regime. Schauberger developed theories about implosion technology, vortex dynamics, and energy systems based on natural principles. He claimed that the Germans were building flying saucers powered by his designs, and that these craft were capable of extraordinary performance. After the war, Schauberger was brought to the United States as part of Operation Paperclip, the program that recruited German scientists. He was interrogated, his work was confiscated, and he died under mysterious circumstances shortly after returning to Austria. If Schauberger's technology was real, and if it was being developed in Antarctica, then the Nazi base theory takes on new dimensions. It would not just be a hidden refuge for fleeing war criminals, it would be a functioning research and development facility, continuing the work that began during the war. Supporting this theory are reports of German U-boats that disappeared in the final days of World War II. U-530 and U-977, for example, surrendered in Argentina in July and August of 1945, months after Germany's official surrender. The crews were interrogated, but they gave conflicting and incomplete accounts of their activities. Some researchers believe these submarines were part of a convoy that transported personnel, equipment, and possibly Hitler himself to Antarctica. There are also claims that large numbers of German scientists, engineers, and high-ranking Nazi officials simply vanished at the end of the war. While many were captured or killed, others were never accounted for. Could they have escaped to a secret base in Antarctica, where they continued their work away from prying eyes? This brings us to Operation Highjump, which we discussed earlier. If the Nazis had established a base in Antarctica, and if the United States received intelligence about it, then Highjump makes perfect sense as a military operation to neutralize that threat. The scale of the mission, the involvement of over 4,000 troops, the heavy losses, and the sudden retreat all align with an armed confrontation rather than a simple scientific expedition. Testimonies from Operation Highjump personnel, leaked over the years, describe encounters with advanced aircraft that emerged from the ice and water. These craft, described as disc-shaped and glowing, attacked the fleet, disabling ships and shooting down planes. The Americans were forced to retreat, unable to compete with the technology they faced. If these accounts are true, then the Nazi base was not just a legend, but a real operational facility with defensive capabilities. And if it existed in 1947, there is no reason to believe it was ever fully dismantled. It could still be there, hidden beneath the ice, maintained by the descendants of the original occupants or by whoever inherited control of the technology. Some theories suggest that the base was not purely German, but was part of a larger international effort. After the war, former Nazis integrated into various governments and organizations through programs like Paperclip. Intelligence agencies, military contractors, and shadowy groups with access to classified technologies may have continued the work begun in Antarctica, using the base as a testing ground for experimental projects away from public scrutiny. This would explain the continued secrecy surrounding Antarctica, the strict enforcement of the Antarctic Treaty, and the suppression of any information that might reveal what is really happening down there. It would also explain the persistent reports of UFO activity in the region, sightings that have been documented by military personnel, scientists, and explorers from multiple nations. In the 1960s and 70s, during the height of the Cold War, both the United States and the Soviet Union conducted extensive operations in Antarctica. Officially, these were scientific missions focused on climate research and geological surveys. But declassified documents reveal that both superpowers were also engaged in reconnaissance, searching for evidence of foreign bases and unusual activities. The Soviets, in particular, were obsessed with Antarctica. They established multiple research stations in remote areas, sometimes in locations that made little scientific sense. Vostok Station, for example, was built in one of the most inhospitable places on Earth, where temperatures regularly drop below -80 degrees Celsius. Why establish a permanent base there unless there was something beneath the ice worth investigating? Soviet scientists at Vostok drilled into Lake Vostok, a subglacial lake that had been sealed off from the surface for millions of years. The lake, which is the size of Lake Ontario, is one of the most pristine and isolated aquatic environments on the planet. But the drilling project, which took decades, was plagued by accidents, unexplained equipment failures, and, according to some reports, discoveries that were never made public. In 2012, Russian scientists finally breached the ice and reached the lake. They collected samples and announced the discovery of unknown microorganisms. But they also hinted at something else, something they were not authorized to discuss. One scientist, in an unguarded moment, mentioned structures at the bottom of the lake, formations that appeared too regular to be natural. He was quickly silenced, and no further information was released. Could there be ruins beneath Lake Vostok? Could there be a submerged base, possibly dating back to the time of the ancient civilization, or built more recently by human or non-human occupants? The secrecy surrounding the lake suggests that the answers to these questions are known, but are being deliberately withheld. The Nazi base theory is not just about Germans hiding in Antarctica. It is about the possibility that Antarctica has been, and continues to be, a hub of clandestine activity. A place where advanced technologies are tested, where secret agreements are made, and where the rules of the surface world do not apply. Whistleblowers from military and intelligence backgrounds have come forward over the years with claims that support this theory. They speak of black budget programs, billions of dollars funneled into projects with no public oversight, and of facilities in Antarctica that are off limits even to most government officials. They describe seeing craft that move silently and effortlessly, craft that do not belong to any known nation, and personnel who are not military or scientific, but something else entirely. One such whistleblower, a former U.S. Navy engineer who worked on classified projects, gave an interview before his death in which he described being flown to Antarctica on a covert mission. He was taken to an underground facility, accessed through a tunnel carved into the ice, and was shown technology that he could not explain. He saw energy devices that generated power without fuel, propulsion systems that manipulated gravity, and what he believed were non-human artifacts. He was told that the facility was a joint operation involving multiple governments and corporations, and that it had been in operation for decades. He was warned never to speak of what he had seen, and he complied for many years out of fear. But in his final days, he decided the truth was more important than his safety. His testimony was recorded and has circulated among researchers, though it has never been officially acknowledged. Are these testimonies credible? It is difficult to say. Whistleblowers often lack hard evidence. They rely on personal accounts, memories, and sometimes documents that cannot be verified. But when multiple individuals from different backgrounds and with no apparent connection to each other tell similar stories, patterns emerge. The Nazi base theory is one piece of a much larger puzzle. It connects to the ancient civilization theory, to Admiral Byrd's encounters, to the satellite anomalies, and to the persistent UFO reports. All of these threads suggest that Antarctica is far more than a frozen wasteland. It is a repository of secrets, a place where the past and present intersect, and where humanity's future may be decided. If the Nazis did establish a base, and if that base has been maintained or expanded, then the question becomes, who controls it now? Is it still in the hands of former Axis sympathizers, or has it been co-opted by international forces? Is it a rogue operation, or is it sanctioned by governments who publicly deny its existence? And if technology beyond our understanding is being developed there, what is the purpose? Is it defensive, meant to protect against external threats? Is it exploitative, designed to give certain groups an advantage over others? Or is it something else, a preparation for an event or revelation that has yet to unfold? The Nazi-based legends are dismissed by mainstream historians as conspiracy theories, the product of overactive imaginations and misinterpreted facts. But the evidence, circumstantial though it may be, continues to accumulate. The unexplained activities, the missing personnel, the advanced technologies that appeared seemingly out of nowhere after the war, they all point to Antarctica as the missing link. As we move deeper into this investigation, we will examine modern expeditions, satellite anomalies, and whistleblower testimonies that further support the idea that Antarctica is not what we have been told. The Nazi base may be just the beginning, a single layer of a much deeper and more complex reality. And as the ice continues to melt, as technology continues to advance, the truth will become harder and harder to suppress. The secrets of Antarctica are beginning to surface, and they will change everything. Modern expeditions. Why scientists are banned. Antarctica, by international law, is designated as a scientific preserve, a continent devoted to peaceful research and cooperation. The Antarctic Treaty, signed in 1959 and now supported by over 50 nations, ensures that no country can claim territorial sovereignty over the land. Military activity is prohibited. Nuclear testing is banned, the environment is protected, and freedom of scientific investigation is guaranteed. But here's the paradox. While the treaty proclaims freedom of scientific research, in practice, access to Antarctica is highly restricted. Independent scientists, researchers who are not affiliated with government-funded programs, and journalists seeking to investigate find it nearly impossible to conduct work on the continent. Why? To visit Antarctica, you need permits. These permits are issued by the national Antarctic programs of treaty signatory nations. You must justify your research, provide detailed plans, and undergo extensive vetting. If your proposed research does not align with approved objectives, or if it ventures into sensitive areas, your application will be denied. And certain regions of Antarctica are off limits entirely, designated as specially protected areas or sites of special scientific interest, with access restricted to a select few. On the surface, these regulations seem reasonable. Antarctica is a fragile environment. Unrestricted access could lead to ecological damage, interference with scientific studies, and safety hazards. But scratch beneath the surface, and the restrictions appear less about protection and more about control. Consider the case of independent researchers who have tried to investigate anomalies detected by satellite imagery. When they apply for permits to conduct ground surveys of areas showing potential pyramid structures or geometric formations, their applications are rejected. The reasons given are vague: logistical difficulties, environmental concerns, lack of scientific merit. But the underlying message is clear. Do not investigate this. Journalists have faced similar obstacles. In 2009, a documentary crew attempted to travel to Antarctica to film a segment on climate change and unexplained geographical features. They secured funding, assembled a team, and applied for the necessary permits. After months of bureaucratic delays, their application was denied. No explanation was provided beyond a standard rejection letter, citing concerns over the impact of the proposed activities. Even government-funded scientists are not immune to restrictions. Researchers who have worked at Antarctic bases report that certain topics are off-limits. If you are studying ice cores, marine biology, or atmospheric conditions, you will receive full support. But if you express interest in archaeological anomalies, unexplained structures, or historical mysteries, you will be discouraged, reassigned, or, in some cases, removed from the program. One such scientist, who spoke anonymously to a documentary filmmaker in 2015, described being warned by supervisors not to discuss unusual findings. He had been part of a team conducting seismic surveys and had detected what appeared to be large, hollow spaces beneath the ice. Spaces that could indicate caverns or artificial structures. When he proposed further investigation, he was told the data was inconclusive and that pursuing the matter would jeopardize future funding. He complied, but later regretted not pushing harder for answers. There are also accounts of expeditions that ventured into forbidden zones and faced consequences. In the late 1990s, a privately funded exploration team managed to reach one of the restricted areas in the interior of East Antarctica. They were there for less than a day before being intercepted by military personnel. The team was detained, their equipment confiscated, and they were escorted off the continent. Legal action was threatened if they ever attempted to return or spoke publicly about what they had seen. What had they seen? According to leaked reports, they had discovered the entrance to a cave system, partially exposed by melting ice, with carvings on the rock face. The carvings depicted symbols and figures that did not match any known human culture. They photographed the site before being forced to leave, but the photographs were seized. Years later, one member of the team managed to smuggle out a single image, which has circulated online. The image shows what appears to be an entrance, with smooth, carved stone, and symbols that some researchers have compared to ancient Sanskrit or Sumerian script. The existence of restricted zones in Antarctica is not a secret. The The Antarctic Treaty allows for specially protected areas to safeguard unique ecosystems, geological formations, and historical sites. But the sheer number of these zones and their strategic placement over regions where anomalies have been detected raises suspicion. It suggests that the restrictions are not solely environmental, but are designed to prevent discovery of something significant. Take, for example, the Gamburtsev mountain range, a subglacial mountain range buried beneath the East Antarctic ice sheet. Discovered by Soviet researchers in the 1950s, the range is roughly the size of the European Alps. Seismic studies have revealed that the mountains have peaks, valleys, and river systems, all completely hidden beneath miles of ice. The range is one of the most geologically mysterious features on Earth, and it has been designated a restricted area. Why restrict access to mountains that no one can see? Because the Gamburtsev range is not just geologically interesting, it is archaeologically intriguing. The mountains are aligned in ways that suggest they may have served as landmarks or sacred sites for an ancient civilization. And the river systems, now frozen, could have supported habitation. If there are ruins in Antarctica, the Gamburtsev range is one of the most likely locations. But no independent research is allowed. The only data comes from government-sanctioned programs, and that data is carefully filtered before being released to the public. Maps of the subglacial terrain are published, but they are low resolution, lacking the detail that modern imaging technology can provide. When higher resolution images are requested under Freedom of Information laws, the requests are denied or heavily redacted. In 2010, a group of scientists from multiple nations collaborated on a project called the Gamburtsev Province Project, aiming to study the mountains using advanced seismic and radar techniques. They collected vast amounts of data, and their initial findings hinted at structures beneath the ice that did not appear to be natural. But when the project's full results were due to be published, delays occurred. The data was classified, and the researchers were instructed not to discuss certain aspects of their work. The official papers that were eventually released focused on glacial dynamics and made no mention of anomalies. This pattern of suppression extends to other regions as well. The Wilkes Land region, for instance, has been the subject of intense interest due to a massive gravitational anomaly detected by satellite. The anomaly, known as the Wilkes Land crater, is believed by some geologists to be the remnant of a massive impact crater, possibly from an asteroid strike that contributed to the Permian extinction event millions of years ago. But other researchers have noted that the gravitational signature is inconsistent with a simple impact crater and may indicate a dense, metallic structure beneath the ice. Attempts to conduct ground-penetrating surveys of Wilkes Land have been blocked. The area is designated as off-limits for environmental reasons, though it is one of the most remote and least ecologically sensitive regions of Antarctica. The real reason for the restriction may be that authorities know, or suspect, that the anomaly is not natural, and they do not want independent verification. Then there is the case of the Blood Falls, a peculiar feature in the McMurdo Dry Valleys, where iron-rich water flows from beneath a glacier, staining the ice red. The falls were discovered in 1911 and have been studied extensively, but in 2015, researchers using advanced imaging detected a network of tunnels beneath the glacier, far more extensive than previously thought. These tunnels appeared to be connected to a larger subglacial system, possibly leading to caverns or other features deep below the ice. When the discovery was announced, there was initial excitement, but follow-up expeditions were canceled due to funding issues, and the research team was disbanded. The lead scientist, who had spent years studying the dry valleys, was reassigned to a different project in the Arctic. The data from the tunnel discovery was archived and has not been made publicly available. Why would funding be cut for such a significant discovery? The official reason was budget constraints, but the timing was suspicious. It occurred shortly after preliminary reports suggested the tunnels might be partially artificial, possibly carved or modified by intelligent activity. All of these incidents, the denied permits, the restricted zones, the suppressed research, they paint a picture of a continent that is being carefully managed and monitored. The Antarctic Treaty, for all its noble language about international cooperation and scientific freedom, has become a tool for controlling access and information. But who benefits from this control? The answer is not simple. The treaty is administered by an international committee, with representatives from all signatory nations. Decisions are made by consensus, which means that no single country can unilaterally impose restrictions. But Consensus also means that if certain powerful nations want to keep something hidden, they can influence the committee to adopt policies that serve that purpose. The United States, Russia, and other major powers have significant interests in Antarctica. They maintain the largest research stations, fund the most extensive programs, and have the most to lose if certain truths come to light. If Antarctica holds evidence of advanced ancient civilizations, or if there are active bases with exotic technologies, revealing that information would upend geopolitical power structures, challenge religious and scientific orthodoxy, and potentially trigger conflicts over access to those resources and technologies. So the status quo is maintained. Scientists who ask the wrong questions are silenced, expeditions that venture too far are stopped, and the public is fed a steady stream of sanitized information about penguins, ice cores, and climate change, while the real mysteries remain buried beneath the ice. But cracks are forming in the wall of secrecy. Satellite technology, available to private companies and even individuals, is providing unprecedented views of Antarctica. High-resolution imagery is revealing details that were previously classified or unknown. Anomalies that were once dismissed as sensor errors are being confirmed by multiple independent sources. And whistleblowers, emboldened by age or conscience, are coming forward with accounts that corroborate the alternative narrative. One whistleblower, a former logistics coordinator for the U.S. Antarctic program, revealed in a 2018 interview that certain supply flights to Antarctica were designated as classified missions. These flights did not appear on standard manifests, and personnel involved were required to sign non-disclosure agreements. The coordinator was told that the flights were transporting equipment for sensitive scientific experiments, but he later learned from colleagues that the cargo included military-grade technology and construction materials, far beyond what would be needed for typical research. Where was this equipment going? The coordinator suspected it was being delivered to undisclosed locations in the interior, areas that were not official research stations. He believed there were secret facilities, operated by a coalition of governments or private entities, conducting work that had nothing to do with public scientific research. Another whistleblower, a pilot who flew missions over Antarctica for over a decade, described being ordered to avoid certain flight paths. These no-fly zones were not marked on civilian maps, and no explanation was given for their existence. On one occasion, the pilot deviated slightly from his assigned route due to weather and flew over one of these restricted areas. Through the cockpit window, he saw what appeared to be a large artificial structure, partially visible through a gap in the ice. It looked like a metal dome or tower, reflecting sunlight. He radioed his observation to base and was immediately told to change course and never mention what he had seen. Upon landing, he was debriefed and warned that discussing the incident could result in the loss of his license and legal prosecution. These testimonies, and many others like them, are anecdotal and difficult to verify, but their consistency across different times, locations, and individuals suggests a pattern. Antarctica is not the open, transparent scientific preserve it is portrayed to be. It is a place where secrets are kept, where access is controlled, and where the truth is reserved for a select few. As technology continues to democratize information, as satellites become more powerful and accessible, and as climate change continues to alter the Antarctic landscape, the ability to maintain this secrecy is diminishing. Ice is melting, exposing regions that have been hidden for millennia. And with each passing year, the risk increases that someone, somewhere, will capture an image or gather data that cannot be explained away or suppressed. The authorities know this, and they are racing to manage the narrative, to control the flow of information before it becomes uncontrollable. But the truth has a way of emerging, no matter how deeply it is buried. And Antarctica's secrets, held for so long beneath the ice, are beginning to surface. The question is, when the full truth is finally revealed, how will humanity respond? Will we embrace the knowledge, the challenges, and the opportunities it presents? Or will we retreat into denial, clinging to comfortable lies rather than facing uncomfortable realities? Antarctica is testing us. It is a mirror reflecting back our fears, our ambitions, and our willingness to seek the truth, no matter where it leads. And the scientists who are banned, the researchers who are silenced, the whistleblowers who risk everything to speak out, they are the vanguard of a movement that will not be stopped. A movement toward transparency, toward discovery, and toward reclaiming the history that has been stolen from us. The modern expeditions to Antarctica, limited and controlled as they are revealing glimpses of a reality far stranger than fiction. And as we continue this journey, we will see just how deep the cover-up goes and what it is really protecting. Satellite anomalies, structures they can't explain. The year is 2007. Google Earth, a revolutionary tool that brings satellite imagery to the masses, has just expanded its coverage of Antarctica. For the first time in history, ordinary people can explore the frozen continent from their computers, zooming in on glaciers, mountains, and research stations without needing government approval or expensive expeditions. What they find shocks the world. Within weeks of the Antarctic imagery going live, users begin reporting anomalies, strange geometric formations buried beneath the ice, perfectly circular structures that appear too regular to be natural, what looks like entrances to underground facilities, and most controversially, pyramid-shaped mountains that exhibit symmetry and angles suggesting intelligent design. The internet explodes with speculation. Forums, blogs, and early social media platforms buzz with theories about ancient civilizations, alien bases, and government cover-ups. Mainstream media dismisses it all as pareidolia, the human tendency to see patterns where none exist. Scientists explain that ice can create unusual formations, that shadows and resolution artifacts can trick the eye, and that there is nothing unusual about Antarctica beyond what we already know. But some of the anomalies are harder to explain away. Let's examine the evidence, starting with the most compelling cases. The first major discovery is what researchers call the Antarctic Pyramid. Located in the Ellsworth Mountains, this formation was initially spotted by multiple independent observers in late 2012. Satellite images from Google Earth and other sources show a mountain with a near-perfect pyramidal shape. Its four faces are remarkably symmetrical, angled at approximately 52 degrees, similar to the Great Pyramid of Giza. The structure is aligned with the cardinal directions, with its apex pointing directly north. Geologists argue it's a nunatak, a natural mountain peak that protrudes through the ice. Wind erosion and freeze-thaw cycles, they say, can create angular shapes. But the counter-argument is strong. Erosion is a chaotic process. It doesn't produce perfect angles, symmetrical faces, or cardinal alignments. Nature makes jagged, irregular shapes. The Antarctic Pyramid is anything but irregular. More intriguing are the additional pyramidal structures discovered nearby. Within a 100-mile radius of the first pyramid, researchers identified at least 3 more formations with similar characteristics, all roughly the same size, all pyramidal in shape, all aligned with each other in what appears to be a deliberate pattern. This clustering suggests intentional placement, not geological accident. Then there's the question of scale. The Antarctic Pyramid is massive, over 1,000 feet tall, with a base spanning several thousand feet. If it is artificial, the amount of labor and engineering required to build it would rival any of the ancient wonders of the world. And if it predates the ice, that places its construction at least 6,000 to 12,000 years ago, long before any known human civilization possessed such capabilities. Ground-penetrating radar studies of the region, though limited and heavily classified, have detected anomalies beneath the ice surrounding these pyramids. The radar returns show voids, chambers, and what appear to be tunnels connecting the structures. Some researchers believe these are entrance systems, ways to access interior spaces within the pyramids or underground complexes beneath them. But here's where it gets even stranger. In 2016, a team using satellite thermal imaging detected heat signatures emanating from the area around the pyramids. The heat was not uniform across the ice, but concentrated in specific locations, suggesting geothermal vents or, more provocatively, active systems generating energy within the structures. Natural geothermal activity exists in Antarctica, but the heat signatures detected here were consistent with artificial sources, power generation, or heating systems designed to maintain habitable environments. When news of the thermal anomalies broke, the scientific establishment moved quickly to contain the narrative. They published papers attributing the heat to volcanic activity beneath the ice. They pointed to known geothermal zones in Antarctica and argued that the thermal signatures were unremarkable. But independent analysts noted that the heat signatures did not match the patterns of natural geothermal vents. They were too localized, too consistent, and too symmetrically distributed around the pyramidal structures to be explained by volcanic activity alone. Moving beyond the pyramids, let's talk about the Antarctic circles. In various regions of the continent, satellite imagery has revealed massive circular formations, some over 300 miles in diameter. These circles exhibit concentric rings, geometric patterns, and features that look disturbingly artificial. The most famous is located in Wilkes Land, where a gravitational anomaly was first detected in 2006. The Wilkes Land anomaly is enormous. Gravity measurements from satellites indicate a mass concentration beneath the ice, something incredibly dense and large. The official explanation is that it's a massive impact crater from an ancient asteroid strike, possibly the one that caused the Permian extinction event 250 million years ago. But the problem with this theory is the shape. Impact craters are circular, yes, but they are also chaotic. They have irregular edges, asymmetrical features, and randomness. The Wilkes Land formation is too perfect, its rings are too regular, and the gravity readings suggest a metallic composition, not rock. Some researchers propose an alternative. The Wilkes Land anomaly is not a crater, but a structure, a massive disc-shaped object, possibly a craft or facility, buried deep beneath the ice. The metallic composition would explain the gravity readings. The circular shape and concentric rings would align with advanced engineering, and the sheer size, over 200 miles across, would indicate a technology far beyond anything humanity has achieved. Sound far-fetched? Perhaps. But consider this. In 2018, a leaked document from a European space agency described anomalies detected by ground-penetrating radar over Wilkes Land. The document, which was quickly removed from public access, mentioned structures at various depths beneath the ice, including what appeared to be a central hub with radiating corridors, much like the layout of a city or complex facility. The document suggested that further investigation was warranted, but noted that access to the site was restricted under the Antarctic Treaty. Then there are the Antarctic tunnels and caves. Multiple satellite images show what appear to be entrances, large openings in the ice that lead into the interior of the continent. Some of these entrances are natural, formed by melting ice and glacial movement, but others are suspiciously regular, with smooth edges, right angles, and features that suggest they were carved or constructed. One such entrance, located near the Shackleton Mountains, has been the subject of intense scrutiny. High-resolution imagery shows a rectangular opening, approximately 100 feet wide and 50 feet tall, leading into a dark cavern. The entrance is not covered by snow, despite being in one of the snowiest regions on Earth. This suggests either recent excavation or an active heating system that prevents snow accumulation. Expeditions to investigate these entrances are routinely denied permits. The official reason is safety concerns. The ice is unstable, the weather is unpredictable, and entering unknown cave systems poses significant risks. But the consistency with which these requests are denied, regardless of the credentials and safety protocols proposed, suggests another motive. Authorities do not want anyone exploring these entrances because they do not want us to find what lies beyond them. There's also the case of the Antarctic Oasis. Satellite thermal imaging has identified regions in Antarctica that are significantly warmer than their surroundings. These oases, as they're called, are areas where the ice is thinner or absent entirely, and where liquid water exists year-round. Some of these oases are known and studied, like the McMurdo Dry Valleys, which are ice-free due to unique wind patterns and low humidity. But other oases are not so easily explained. In 2013, a research satellite detected a large thermal anomaly in a previously unexplored region of East Antarctica. The anomaly covered an area of approximately 50 square miles and registered temperatures well above freezing. Follow-up imaging revealed patches of green, vegetation that should not exist at that latitude and altitude. When scientists proposed an expedition to investigate, they were told the region was classified and off-limits. Classified? By whom? Under what authority? Antarctica is supposed to be an international scientific preserve, free from military and political control. Yet, here was a clear case of access being denied based on classification, a term that implies government secrecy and national security concerns. What could possibly be in a warm, vegetated region of Antarctica that warrants such secrecy? One theory is that the oasis is a naturally occurring geothermal zone. and the vegetation is a unique ecosystem that authorities want to protect from contamination. Another theory, far more controversial, is that the oasis is maintained by an artificial heat source, possibly from a subterranean facility, and the vegetation is either a byproduct of that activity or deliberately cultivated by whoever operates the facility. Whistleblowers have added fuel to these theories. In 2019, a former satellite analyst for a Western intelligence agency gave an interview in which he described being assigned to monitor Antarctica for unusual activity. He claimed that certain regions of the continent were under constant surveillance, not by civilian scientific agencies, but by military intelligence. He described seeing imagery that showed large, metallic structures partially visible through breaks in the ice, craft that appeared to be docked or stored in ice caverns, and movement, personnel, and vehicles operating in areas where no official bases existed. When he reported these observations to his superiors, he was told they were classified and that his job was to log the data, not question it. He complied for years, but eventually, the weight of what he had seen compelled him to speak out. His testimony, like so many others, was dismissed as fabrication or misinterpretation. But he provided detailed coordinates, timestamps, and descriptions that matched other independent reports of anomalies in those exact locations. Another satellite anomaly that has puzzled researchers is the Antarctic grid. In certain regions, particularly in East Antarctica and parts of the Ross Ice Shelf, satellite imagery reveals a pattern that looks like a grid or network. Straight lines intersecting at right angles, spanning hundreds of miles. These lines are not visible to the naked eye. They only show up in specific wavelengths of satellite imaging, particularly in thermal and radar bands. The official explanation is that the grid is a result of ice dynamics, crevasses, and pressure ridges forming along stress lines in the ice sheet. But experts in glaciology have noted that the grid is far too regular and extensive to be explained by natural ice movement. It looks designed like a road network or infrastructure laid out beneath the ice. Could it be the remnants of an ancient civilization's infrastructure, streets and foundations that still leave a thermal or structural signature detectable from space? Or could it be something more recent, a network of tunnels, conduits, or transportation systems built and maintained by a modern clandestine operation? Without ground access, without the ability to excavate and investigate, we can only speculate. But the sheer volume of anomalies, the pyramids, the circles, the entrances, the oases, the grid, they all point to one undeniable conclusion. There is more happening in Antarctica than we are being told. Whether it's ancient ruins, secret military bases, or something even more exotic, the satellite evidence suggests that Antarctica is not the empty, lifeless wasteland portrayed in official narratives. The technology exists to investigate these anomalies. We have ground-penetrating radar that can see through miles of ice. We have drones that can fly into caves and tunnels. We have submersibles that can explore subglacial lakes. We have remote sensing equipment that can detect and analyze structures from orbit. The tools are there. What is lacking is the will, or more accurately, the permission. And that brings us back to the Antarctic Treaty. The treaty, signed in the spirit of scientific cooperation and environmental protection, has become a tool for controlling information and access. It allows signatory nations to designate areas as restricted, to deny permits without explanation, and to suppress findings that do not align with approved narratives. But as satellite technology becomes more advanced and more accessible, the ability to hide what is in Antarctica diminishes. Companies like Planet Labs and Maxar Technologies operate constellations of satellites that provide daily high-resolution imagery of the entire planet, including Antarctica. Private individuals and independent researchers can now access this data, analyze it, and share their findings online, bypassing traditional gatekeepers. This democratization of satellite imagery is a double-edged sword for those who wish to keep Antarctica's secrets hidden. On one hand, they can dismiss individual findings as misinterpretations, pareidolia, or conspiracy theories. On the other hand, when multiple independent sources using different technologies all detect the same anomalies, the dismissals become less credible. We are approaching a tipping point, a moment when the weight of evidence becomes too great to ignore, when the public demands answers, and when the authorities can no longer deflect or deny. The satellite anomalies are the cracks in the wall of secrecy, the visible signs that something is hidden beneath the ice, waiting to be discovered. What will we find when that wall finally crumbles? Will we uncover the ruins of an ancient civilization? Proof that humanity's history is far older and more advanced than we believed. Will we discover secret bases, evidence of clandestine operations conducted by shadowy organizations? Or will we find something even more extraordinary? Something that challenges our understanding of reality itself? The satellites are watching, the data is accumulating, and the truth, whatever it may be, is closer to being revealed than ever before. Antarctica's secrets are written in the ice, in the heat signatures, in the geometric patterns visible from space. All we have to do is look, and when we do, the world will never be the same. Whistleblower testimonies. Those who spoke out. Throughout this investigation, we've examined maps, satellite images, historical accounts, and scientific anomalies. But perhaps the most compelling evidence comes from those who have been there, who have seen things firsthand, and who have risked everything to speak the truth. These are the whistleblowers, individuals from military, scientific, and government backgrounds who decided that the public has a right to know what is really happening in Antarctica. Let's begin with Rear Admiral Richard Byrd, whose testimony we've already discussed. But Byrd was not alone. Other members of Operation Highjump have come forward over the years, corroborating his accounts and adding new details. John Seierson, a flight engineer who served on one of the PBM Mariners during Highjump, gave an interview in the late 1990s, shortly before his death. He described an incident where his aircraft was on a reconnaissance mission over the interior of Antarctica when they encountered what he could only describe as flying discs. These objects, he said, were silent, moved at incredible speeds, and seemed to defy gravity. They circled the plane, and at one point, one of the discs came so close that Seierson could see details: a metallic surface, no visible seams or rivets, and a faint glow emanating from the underside. The pilot radioed back to base, reporting the encounter. The response was immediate and stern. Return to base. Do not engage, do not take photographs, and do not discuss what you have seen. When they landed, the crew was debriefed by intelligence officers who told them the objects were classified and that speaking about them publicly would result in court-martial. Seierson honored that agreement for decades, but in his final years, he decided the truth was more important than his oath of silence. Another Operation Highjump veteran, whose name was redacted from the interview for legal reasons, described being part of a ground team that discovered an entrance to a cave system. The team entered the cave, expecting to find ice formations and maybe some geological features of interest. Instead, they found walls that were too smooth, too straight, and covered in symbols. The symbols, he said, were not from any language he recognized, and they glowed faintly in the dark as if they were bioluminescent or somehow powered. The team reported their findings, and within hours they were ordered to evacuate the area. The entrance was sealed with explosives, and the team was told never to speak of it. When asked why, the commanding officer simply said, "There are things down here we are not meant to find." Moving forward in time, we have the testimony of Brian, a pseudonym for a Navy SEAL who claims to have participated in a classified mission to Antarctica in 2003. Brian's account, shared in an online interview that has since been deleted multiple times, describes being flown to a remote location in the interior of the continent, far from any known research station. The mission, he said, was to provide security for a team of scientists who were investigating an anomaly detected by ground-penetrating radar. The team descended into a massive ice cavern, one that appeared to have been carved or formed by intelligent activity. Inside the cavern, they found structures, buildings made of a material that Brian described as neither stone nor metal, but something in between. The structures were ancient, covered in ice and frost, but still intact. The scientists were excited, taking samples and measurements. But as they ventured deeper into the cavern, they encountered something that made them abort the mission. Brian would not say exactly what they found, citing fears for his safety, but he hinted that it was not human, or at least not anything from recorded human history. The team was evacuated, the site was sealed, and everyone involved was made to sign non-disclosure agreements under threat of criminal prosecution. Then there's the case of Dr. Anton Padalka, a Russian scientist who allegedly worked at Vostok Station in the early 2000s. According to his testimony, which was leaked through a third party, the Russian team drilling into Lake Vostok encountered more than just microorganisms. They found a creature, something large and intelligent, living in the subglacial lake. The creature, Dr. Padalka claimed, was able to paralyze team members with some form of venom or energy, and it killed one researcher before the team managed to escape. The Russian government immediately classified the incident. The drilling project was suspended, and Dr. Padalka was reassigned. He later fled Russia, seeking asylum in Switzerland, where he gave an interview to a Swiss newspaper. He claimed that Lake Vostok was not just a lake, but a habitat for something ancient, something that had been sealed beneath the ice for millions of years and did not want to be disturbed. Mainstream scientists dismissed Padalka's account as a hoax or delusion. They pointed out that no other member of the Vostok team corroborated his story, and that there was no physical evidence of any creature. But Padalka insisted that the evidence was confiscated, and that the other team members were either silenced or too afraid to speak. His story remains unverified, but it adds to the pattern of whistleblowers reporting encounters with the unknown in Antarctica. Another whistleblower, who identified himself only as Spartan 1, claimed to be a former military contractor who worked on black budget projects in Antarctica. In a series of online posts, he described being part of a team that maintained and operated a secret facility deep beneath the ice. The facility, he said, was not American, Russian, or Chinese, but multinational, operated by a consortium of governments and private corporations. Spartan 1 described advanced technology at the facility, including energy systems that tapped into geothermal power, propulsion systems being tested for next-generation aircraft, and research into exotic materials that exhibited properties not found in conventional science. He also claimed that the facility was studying artifacts recovered from the ice, objects that predated human civilization, and suggested that Earth had been visited or inhabited by advanced intelligences in the distant past. When asked why he was speaking out, Spartan 1 said he could no longer be part of something that kept humanity in the dark about its own history. He believed that the public had a right to know that we are not alone, that our past is not what we've been taught, and that powerful forces are hoarding knowledge that could transform civilization. His posts were taken down within days, and his identity has never been confirmed, but his account aligns with other testimonies and raises serious questions about what is really happening beneath the ice. We also have the testimony of Linda Moulton Howe, an investigative journalist who has spent decades researching Antarctic mysteries. While not a whistleblower herself, Howe has interviewed numerous individuals who have worked in Antarctica and who have shared information off the record. In her documentaries and articles, she has compiled accounts from scientists, military personnel, and support staff, all describing unusual phenomena. These accounts include sightings of craft entering and exiting the ice, encounters with areas that are inexplicably warm and habitable, and reports of structures visible through the ice during certain lighting conditions. Howe has been criticized by skeptics as a conspiracy theorist, but her work is meticulously sourced, and she has presented credible witnesses who have no apparent motive to lie. One of the most chilling testimonies comes from Corey Goode, a controversial figure who claims to have been part of a secret space program with connections to Antarctica. Goode's accounts are difficult to verify and are often dismissed as science fiction, but he has described in detail visits to underground bases in Antarctica, encounters with non-human intelligences, and the recovery of ancient technology. Goode claims that beneath the ice lies a vast network of tunnels and chambers, some natural, some artificial, and that these spaces are being explored and exploited by military and corporate interests. He describes seeing craft, disc-shaped and triangular, that are capable of interstellar travel, and he insists that some of these craft were recovered from the Antarctic ice, reverse-engineered, and are now operational. Whether you believe Goode or not, his testimony has resonated with a large audience, and it has prompted others to come forward with similar claims. The consistency of these accounts, the descriptions of technology, the mention of specific locations, and the corroboration from other whistleblowers suggests that there may be truth buried within the sensational elements. It's important to note that whistleblower testimonies are not proof. They are anecdotal, often lacking physical evidence, and can be subject to embellishment or misinterpretation. But when multiple individuals from different backgrounds with no apparent connection to each other describe similar phenomena, patterns emerge, and these patterns cannot be easily dismissed. The risks these whistleblowers take are real. Many have faced harassment, legal threats, and professional ruin. Some have disappeared or died under mysterious circumstances. The fact that they speak out despite these risks lends credibility to their claims. They have nothing to gain and everything to lose, yet they believe the truth is worth the sacrifice. Consider the case of Matthew Boylan, a former NASA contractor who worked on satellite imagery. Boylan claimed in an interview that he was tasked with editing images of Antarctica to remove anomalies that could raise public questions. He described being shown raw satellite feeds that contained structures, formations, and objects that were clearly not natural. His job was to blur, obscure, or digitally remove these features before the images were released to the public. Boylan said he initially believed he was protecting sensitive installations, perhaps military bases that needed to remain secret. But over time, he realized that what he was hiding was not military, but something far more significant. When he questioned his supervisors, he was told to do his job and not ask questions. Eventually, he resigned, citing ethical concerns, and has since spoken publicly about his experiences. Another testimony comes from a former Air Force officer who participated in resupply missions to Antarctica. He described flying to locations that were not on any official map, landing at facilities that had no identifying markers, and offloading cargo that was heavily guarded and classified. The personnel at these facilities, he said, were not wearing standard military uniforms, but had insignia he did not recognize. They operated with a level of secrecy that exceeded anything he had encountered in his military career. When he asked his commanding officer about these missions, he was told they were part of a classified program and that discussing them outside of secure channels was a federal offense. He complied, but years later, after retiring, he began to question what he had been part of. He reached out to researchers, sharing what he knew, hoping that others could piece together the larger picture. These testimonies, and many others like them, paint a picture of Antarctica as a place where extraordinary things are happening, where secrets are kept, and where those who know too much are silenced. The whistleblowers are not asking us to believe them blindly. They are asking us to investigate, to demand transparency, and to question why access to the continent is so tightly controlled. The truth is, we may never have definitive proof of what is in Antarctica until the ice melts completely or until a whistleblower provides physical evidence that cannot be denied. But in the meantime, the testimonies serve a crucial purpose. They keep the questions alive. They remind us that the official narrative is incomplete and that there are people out there who have seen more than they were supposed to see and who are willing to risk everything to share it with the world. As we approach the final chapter of this documentary, we must ask ourselves, do we trust the whistleblowers? Do we believe that ordinary people, faced with extraordinary circumstances, would lie or fabricate stories for attention or money? Or do we accept that some of them, perhaps many of them, are telling the truth, and that the truth they are revealing is one of the most important in human history? The choice is yours. But remember, every great revelation in history began with someone brave enough to speak out, even when the world was not ready to listen. The whistleblowers of Antarctica are those voices, and it is up to us to decide whether we will hear them. The cover-up continues. What's really down there? We have journeyed through 2.5 hours of evidence, testimony, and mystery. We have examined ancient maps that show Antarctica without ice, explored the failed military mission of Operation Highjump, delved into Admiral Byrd's controversial diary, and analyze satellite anomalies that defy conventional explanation. We have heard from whistleblowers who risked everything to share what they know. And through it all, one question has remained constant. What is really down there beneath the ice of Antarctica? The answer, as we've seen, is complex. It is not a single secret, but a tapestry of secrets, woven together over millennia, hidden by governments, suppressed by those in power, and protected by treaties and classifications. But if we step back and look at the whole picture, patterns emerge, and from those patterns we can begin to piece together a narrative that, while speculative, fits the evidence better than any official explanation. The first layer of the secret is ancient. Antarctica, before it was covered in ice, was likely home to a civilization. This civilization, whether human or something else, possessed advanced knowledge of architecture, astronomy, and perhaps technologies that we have yet to rediscover. They built structures, mapped their world with precision, and left behind traces that can still be detected today, buried beneath miles of glacial ice. Around 10 to 12,000 years ago, a cataclysm occurred. Whether it was a pole shift, a comet impact, or a combination of disasters, the result was catastrophic. The climate changed rapidly, ice began to accumulate, and the civilization was either destroyed or forced to flee. Some may have escaped to other continents, carrying with them knowledge that seeded the later civilizations of Egypt, Sumer, and the Americas. Others may have retreated underground into vast caverns beneath the Antarctic ice, where they continued to survive and develop in isolation. This brings us to the second layer, the possibility that there are still beings in Antarctica, living beneath the ice, monitoring the surface world. Whether they are the descendants of the ancient civilization or something else entirely, visitors from beyond, these beings possess technology far in advance of our own. They have craft that move silently and effortlessly, energy systems that tap into forces we do not understand, and knowledge that spans millennia. Admiral Byrd's encounter, if genuine, was with these beings. They warned him about humanity's use of nuclear weapons, expressed concern about our trajectory, and made it clear that Antarctica was under their protection. The fact that Operation Highjump was forced to retreat suggests that the beings have the capability and willingness to defend their territory. They are not hostile, but they will not allow unchecked aggression. The third layer involves human activity, specifically secret military and corporate operations. After Operation Highjump, the major powers realized that there was something in Antarctica beyond their control. Rather than risk another confrontation, they agreed to the Antarctic Treaty, a diplomatic solution that allowed them to contain the situation while continuing to investigate in secret. Over the decades, facilities have been built beneath the ice, accessed through tunnels and hidden entrances. These facilities are not under the control of any single nation, but are operated by a consortium, a shadow organization with ties to military-industrial complexes, intelligence agencies, and private corporations. Their goals are multifaceted: to recover and reverse engineer ancient technology, to study the beings that inhabit the inner regions, to test experimental weapons and propulsion systems, and to prepare for contingencies, scenarios where the existence of these secrets becomes public knowledge. The Antarctic Treaty serves multiple purposes. It keeps the continent demilitarized, preventing overt conflict over its secrets. It restricts access, ensuring that only authorized personnel can explore sensitive areas. And it provides a legal framework for suppressing information, allowing signatory nations to classify findings under the guise of environmental protection or scientific sensitivity. But the treaty is not foolproof. Whistleblowers continue to emerge. Satellite technology makes it harder to hide large structures and activities. And climate change is melting the ice, exposing areas that have been hidden for millennia. The authorities know they are running out of time. The cover-up cannot continue indefinitely. So, what is the endgame? What are they preparing for? One possibility is disclosure. At some point, the evidence will become so overwhelming that the official narrative can no longer be maintained. When that happens, governments will have to acknowledge the truth, that Antarctica holds the remnants of an ancient civilization, that there are beings living beneath the ice, and that humanity is not as unique or as advanced as we have believed. Such a disclosure would be earth-shattering, rewriting history, challenging religions, and forcing a re-evaluation of our place in the universe. Another possibility is containment. The authorities may believe that the secrets of Antarctica are too dangerous to reveal. Perhaps the technology is too powerful, capable of being weaponized in ways that could destabilize civilization. Perhaps the beings are not benevolent, and revealing their existence would cause panic. Or perhaps the knowledge itself, the realization that advanced civilizations have risen and fallen before us, would undermine the social order, leading to nihilism or upheaval. In this scenario, the cover-up continues, not out of malice, but out of a misguided belief that humanity is not ready for the truth. The authorities see themselves as guardians, protecting us from knowledge that could do more harm than good. But this paternalistic approach denies us agency, the right to know our own history, to make our own choices, and to face the truth, no matter how unsettling. A third possibility is exploitation. The The technology and resources in Antarctica are being hoarded by a select few, used to advance their own agendas, to consolidate power, and to maintain dominance over the rest of humanity. In this scenario, the cover-up is not about protection, but about control. Those who have access to the secrets are using them to build a breakaway civilization, one that operates beyond the laws and norms of the surface world, accountable to no one. Which of these scenarios is correct? Perhaps all of them, to varying degrees. The situation in Antarctica is likely complex, with multiple factions, competing interests, and shifting alliances. Some within the power structure may genuinely believe they are protecting humanity. Others may be driven by greed, ambition, or fear. And still others may have their own agendas, plans that we cannot even begin to fathom. But one thing is certain, the cover-up is crumbling. The ice is melting, the satellites are watching, the whistleblowers are speaking, and the public is asking questions. The momentum is shifting, and those who have guarded Antarctica's secrets for so long are losing their grip. So, what should we do? How should we, as individuals and as a society, respond to the evidence we have seen? First, we must demand transparency. The Antarctic Treaty was meant to promote scientific cooperation, not to enable secrecy. We must pressure our governments to declassify information about Antarctica, to allow independent researchers access to restricted areas, and to conduct open investigations into the anomalies that have been detected. Second, we must support the whistleblowers. These brave individuals have risked their careers, their freedom, and sometimes their lives to bring us information that the authorities wanted to keep hidden. We must listen to their testimonies, protect them from retaliation, and amplify their voices so that their message reaches as many people as possible. Third, we must remain skeptical but open-minded. Not every claim about Antarctica is true. Some are exaggerations, some are hoaxes, and some are genuine mistakes. But dismissing all alternative narratives as conspiracy theories is intellectually lazy and dishonest. We must evaluate the evidence on its merits, follow the data where it leads, and be willing to revise our beliefs when new information emerges. Fourth, we must prepare ourselves for the possibility that our understanding of history, of humanity, and of our place in the universe may be fundamentally wrong. If the secrets of Antarctica are as profound as the evidence suggests, then disclosure will challenge everything we thought we knew. It will be uncomfortable, disorienting, and possibly frightening. But it will also be liberating, empowering us with knowledge that could transform our civilization for the better. Imagine a world where we have access to clean, limitless energy, where diseases can be cured with technologies recovered from the ice, where we understand our true origins and can learn from the mistakes of the civilizations that came before us. This is not fantasy. This is what could be waiting for us in Antarctica, if only we have the courage to seek it out. But the journey will not be easy. The forces that have kept these secrets hidden for so long will not surrender them willingly. There will be resistance, disinformation, and attempts to discredit those who ask uncomfortable questions. We must be prepared for that. We must be resilient, persistent, and united in our demand for the truth. Antarctica is the last great frontier on Earth. It is a place of mystery, wonder, and danger. It holds the key to our past and possibly to our future. For too long, it has been controlled by those who believe they know what is best for us. But the time has come to take back that control, to reclaim our history, and to face whatever lies beneath the ice, no matter how challenging or transformative it may be. The cover-up continues, but it will not last forever. The truth is emerging, piece by piece, year by year. And when it finally comes to light, when the full story of Antarctica is revealed, humanity will stand at a crossroads. We will have to choose between the comfortable lies we have been living with and the difficult truths that could set us free. What will we choose? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain, the secrets of Antarctica will not remain buried forever. The ice is melting, the evidence is mounting, and the world is waking up. This is Antarctica's forbidden history. And now, you know the truth they don't want you to know. You've just spent 2.5 hours beneath Antarctica's ice, uncovering secrets buried for decades. But forbidden history runs deeper. Next, discover the dark truth about the Ottoman Empire's blood tax, or witness the horrific reality of medieval punishments. Subscribe and let the mysteries find you while you sleep.